Chihiro Furuya is a first-year student at Shiyu High School, and he's obsessed with everything related to zombies. He collects all kinds of zombie-related items from DVDs and dolls to designs, video games, and more. What's even crazier is that he dreams of meeting a super cute zombie girl, and he even wants to fall in love with one. Chihiro shares this zombie girl obsession with his two close friends, Yasutaka and Emoji. Naturally, Yasutaka thinks Chihiro's wish is strange, but Chihiro doesn't care because it's been his dream for a long time. Yasutaka is curious about what exactly makes Chihiro so attracted to cute zombie girls. Chihiro simply replies that it brings joy to his heart. Moji suggests that maybe Chihiro feels sympathy for those who have died and come back to life. However, Yasutaka disagrees with Moji's reasoning. The truth is, even Chihiro doesn't really know what drives his obsession with zombie girls. The Furuya family has a long history of maintaining the Shiryu Temple. Chihiro lives with his family at the temple. His grandfather, Jaguru Furuya, seems a bit senile, while his father, Duwan Furuya, serves as the head priest at the temple. His younger sister, Mero Furuya, is a 12-year-old girl. Every day, Chihiro's father handles breakfast while Mero takes care of the other household chores. During mealtimes, Jaguru repeatedly tells Mero to stop putting Napa cabbage in the miso soup, and Mero always replies that it's just regular cabbage. That's just how Jaguru is, and the whole family is used to it because of his age. Another member of their family is Babu, a stray cat that used to roam around the temple until they adopted him. Chihiro's mother passed away when he was young, and he doesn't even remember her anymore. Even so, Chihiro feels their family is incredibly happy, and he's grateful that he's never felt lonely. One day, their family suffered a loss. Babu was hit by a car driven by their neighbor, and Chihiro witnessed it. The neighbor, an elderly man Chihiro had known since childhood, explained that Babu had suddenly appeared when his car was passing by, and he couldn't stop in time. Chihiro was heartbroken, unable to think or do anything. Duan said they couldn't bury animals at the temple because the followers would strongly oppose it, so he apologized to Chihiro and Mero for only being able to bury Babu behind their house. Mero asked her older brother if, as children of the temple, they should be able to control their emotions during times like this. Chihiro responded, saying that wasn't true. Mero then approached her brother, and they hugged and cried together over Babu's grave. That night, Chihiro couldn't sleep. He was overwhelmed by thoughts of why death had to happen so suddenly, causing such deep sadness. He even began to think that no one should ever have to die. Suddenly, he had a wild idea. He looked for a book stored in his cabinet, one that he got last year while helping his relatives in the Tohoku region sort through old documents that were to be donated to the local archives. The book seemed like an ordinary notebook, and no one even knew when it had been written. The office considered it useless, but not Chihiro. Inside, it detailed a spell that could supposedly bring the dead back to life. It might have been nonsense, but Chihiro thought there was no harm in trying. He decided to resurrect Babu using the magic from the book. He dug up Babu's grave and placed the body in an empty ice cream container before taking it to an abandoned building. Chihiro figured no one would come there, allowing him to perform the ritual without interruption. He entered the building and went up to the upper floors. Chihiro loved zombies, so he would continue to cherish Babu even if he came back as a zombie. On the second day of preparing the magic potion, Chihiro noticed a girl approaching the well near the abandoned building. Not long after, she screamed into the old well. The next morning, Chihiro took ice blocks from the fridge and put them into a bucket when Mero came up to him, startling him. Mero asked what Chihiro was doing, but Chihiro said he wasn't doing anything. His younger sister didn't believe him, feeling like he was lying, especially with his suspicious behavior. Still, Chihiro ignored her and left with the ice blocks. He placed the ice blocks into a cooler that held Babu's body, neatly stored in his bedroom closet. Chihiro headed to school with Yasutaka and Moji. Yasutaka felt like Chihiro wasn't paying attention to his story, but Chihiro assured him that he was. Yasutaka didn't believe him and asked for Chihiro's opinion. Chihiro was confused about what opinion he was talking about, proving that he hadn't been listening at all. Yasutaka ended up repeating his story, talking about the girls at Senka High School and their classmates. Senka High was known for having the prettiest girls in the area, while Shiyu High School was an all-boys school and was boring in comparison. Yasutaka regretted that the students of Senka High always took a different route to school. In fact, the buildings of Shiyu High and Senka High were located across from each other, separated by a river. Yasutaka had purposely applied to Shiyu High because it was near Senka High, hoping to meet and get to know one of the rich girls from Senka. He also mentioned that a very wealthy girl had started at Senka High this year. Yasutaka was thrilled when he pointed out which girl he meant. The girl with long black hair on the other side of the river was the daughter of Sanka High's principal. Her name was Sanka Rhea. Yasutaka was completely captivated by Rei's beauty and said that because she came from such a high-class family, she was surely an innocent and pure girl. But Chihiro disagreed, saying that not everything was always as it seemed. This irritated Yasutaka, who felt like Chihiro was acting like a know-it-all. Later that day, Chihiro's cousin, Saju Ranko, came to his house to deliver some food. Dune greeted her and mentioned that Mero would be home late today, so he thanked Ranko for bringing the food. Ranko asked where Chihiro was. Dune said Chihiro was in his room, mentioning that since Babu's death, Chihiro always seemed tired and went straight to bed after school. Ranko went into Chihiro's room and woke him up, returning a zombie DVD she had borrowed from him earlier. Chihiro had completely forgotten that he had lent her the DVD. Ranko was surprised, especially since Chihiro had promised to come over to her house to retrieve it. Chihiro explained that he had been a bit busy, but Ranko wasn't convinced and started pulling his hair in frustration. She stopped when Chihiro suddenly asked if she knew Sanka Rhea, a first-year student at Sanka High, since Ranko attended the same school. Ranko said she knew her, and Chihiro asked what kind of girl Rhea was. Ranko only knew Rhea as the principal's daughter and teased Chihiro, wondering if he liked her. She tugged on his hair again, and Chihiro, in pain, quickly denied liking Rhea, saying that Yasutaka was the one interested in her. Continuing to mess with him, Ranko was annoyed because she thought Chihiro had been upset about Babu's death, but it seemed like he was doing just fine. Chihiro, still in pain, pleaded with Ranko to stop. She threw him onto the bed, said goodbye, and reminded him to come to her house next week. Ranko borrowed another zombie DVD and left. Saju Ranko was Chihiro's cousin. Her parents ran a traditional Japanese restaurant, and she was a second-year student at Sanka High School. Even though she was only about half a year older than Chihiro, Ranko always acted like his big sister. On the second night of Chihiro's magic experiment, he began preparing the tools and ingredients needed to make the potion as described in the book. However, one of the pages was unreadable because it was stained. The page seemed to indicate that the necessary ingredient was some type of poisonous plant, but he couldn't figure out which one. Previously, Chihiro had tried using poisonous water hemlock leaves, but it didn't work. He was feeling pessimistic about his efforts, but decided to keep trying for a week. If there were no results by then, he would have no choice but to bury Babu again. Suddenly, he heard footsteps outside the building, so he went to check. It turned out to be Rhea, who was heading toward the well near the building. Once she reached it, Rhea screamed loudly into the old well, just like she had the night before, pouring out all her frustrations. Rhea cried out, wondering why she had to be born into the Sanka family. She just wanted freedom to come and go as she pleased with her friends. But because she was part of the Sanka family, she was never allowed to. Chihiro watched from the window above, sipping from a bottle of water. He was shocked when Rhea shouted that she wanted her father to stop taking naked pictures of her on her birthday to record her growth. Startled, Chihiro accidentally dropped his drink, which caught Rhea off guard. Chihiro tried to hide below the window, but Rhea had already seen him. They awkwardly met, and Chihiro felt really uncomfortable around Rhea. He tried to start a conversation, but suddenly, Rhea begged him to forget everything he had just seen and not tell anyone, saying she'd do anything he asked. Casually, Chihiro joked that he might spread what he had heard yesterday. Rhea was mortified to hear that Chihiro had actually been listening since the night before. She thought maybe it would be better if he hadn't said anything. Now she felt so embarrassed that dying seemed preferable to living. She wished she could die and be reborn as someone else. Chihiro was surprised that even someone from a rich family like Rhea could have such problems. He told her it was normal for someone to go to a quiet place and scream as loudly as they could when forced to do things they hated in life. Rhea then asked if Chihiro had come there to scream too. Chihiro explained everything, and Rhea was shocked to hear about the magic to bring someone back from the dead. She asked if that was even possible. Chihiro couldn't say for sure, but he thought maybe the magic could turn someone into a wandering zombie. He was only trying to help bring Babu back, but now he wasn't so sure. Chihiro really wanted to see Babu running around again like he used to. He even started to think he was just forcing his will onto Babu, who might not even want to come back. But Rhea encouraged him, saying she believed that maybe Babu did want to be with Chihiro again. Rhea even offered to help Chihiro. Chihiro asked her if she really wanted to get involved with something so strange. Rhea explained that her father was obsessed with cleanliness, so they weren't allowed to have any pets at home. She really wanted to show love to animals. Chihiro didn't mind, and he also remembered that Rhea said she'd do anything for him. He jokingly told Rhea she could become a zombie, since she wanted to die and be reborn as someone else. But of course, Chihiro was just kidding. Reia's frightened expression made him laugh. Just as he suspected, Reia was easily tricked. Chihiro then warned her to be careful around guys, saying that bad guys might trick her when she's not paying attention. Reia responded by saying she didn't have a boyfriend, so she'd be fine. Chihiro teased her, saying only innocent girls would be proud of something like that. Reia then asked if Chihiro had a girlfriend, to which he replied that he didn't. Reia pointed out that Chihiro had no right to tease her when he didn't have a girlfriend either. Chihiro told Reia that he wasn't into living girls, he was only interested in zombie girls. Of course, Reia was shocked by that. Chihiro wasn't joking about this. Ever since he was a kid, he had been searching for a zombie girl, though it was obviously hard to find one. Reia stood up and asked Chihiro if he was ready to keep his word if she ever became a zombie. Chihiro was confused, but Reia smiled and told him to think about it before saying goodbye and heading home. Chihiro felt frustrated because he felt like she had outsmarted him. Reia suggested they meet again at the same place tomorrow. Chihiro had never imagined something like this before, imagining Reia becoming a zombie. Reia and Chihiro met again the next day at the same spot. Reia was engrossed in watching a zombie movie on Chihiro's laptop, while Chihiro was busy preparing a magical potion for today's experiment. Reia seemed really interested in the zombie film and asked Chihiro why the zombies were tearing into their friends and eating them. Chihiro explained that this was simply how zombies behave, they attack and eat humans. Reia was surprised because it seemed like she was only just learning what zombies are. She also told Chihiro that she had never watched a zombie movie before. Chihiro intentionally brought a terrifying movie filled with gruesome scenes, hoping to scare Reia on her first watch. But instead, Reia became even more fascinated by the creepy zombie movie. Chihiro reminded Reia that she was supposed to help him make the resurrection potion. Feeling bad for getting too absorbed in the movie, Reia quickly apologized, closed the laptop, and began helping Chihiro gather the ingredients for the potion. She asked what poisonous plants they would be using today. It seemed like Chihiro was running out of ideas and was becoming a bit doubtful about successfully creating a resurrection potion, especially since parts of the instructions in the book were unreadable. Reia asked what would happen to Babu, their pet cat, in the end. Chihiro simply replied that he might have to bury him, especially since this was the 5th day of trying to create the resurrection potion. Chihiro teased Reia by asking if she would eat Babu, and of course, Reia didn't understand why Chihiro would even think that. Chihiro clarified that it was just a joke. He mentioned that he had already tried using all the poisonous plants in the area from morning glory, lily, water hemlock, to Chinese plum. Chihiro then wondered what plant they should try next. Suddenly, Reia suggested they go outside to find more poisonous plants. She hurriedly left, but as she walked, she tripped over a bowling ball, causing her skirt to flip up. Chihiro saw this, making Reia feel embarrassed, and she quickly left the building. Chihiro hadn't expected Reia to be such a bold person. Reia feels that her father's love for her has gone beyond the boundaries of what is normal for a family. When Reia was a toddler, the maids would play with dolls with her. One day, they asked her to grab a doll from them, but Reia, who wasn't yet good at walking, fell and started to cry. The maids comforted her, as most people would, but her father reacted differently. He was upset about the incident, and the next day, all the maids who had played with her were fired. As a child, she would often play ball with the maids in the yard. One day, while they were playing, a cute cat appeared. Naturally, her childlike instincts kicked in, and she went over to pet it. Her father, Senka Danakuru, watched the entire scene from behind a window. The next day, the cat was gone, and so was the maid who had been watching her. Reia was mostly left with her mother, Senka Area, who was distant and cold toward her. Every year on Reia's birthday, her father would take photos of her without any clothes on. As Reia grew older, she started to realize that what her father was doing was far from normal. Even Area became a little suspicious of Danichiru's feelings toward Reia. It got to a point where Reia couldn't take it anymore. She often felt Danichiru's presence or the presence of one of his subordinates watching her. It was a gaze that followed her no matter where she went. At school, Reia made her first friend Nakadai, who is a friendly girl. She comes from a respected family, so Danichiru allowed Reia to be friends with her. Before this, Reia always thought that everyone hides their suffering behind a smile, but after befriending Nakadai, she started to realize that her thinking was wrong. It was just that she hadn't been lucky in life. Reia often visited Nakadai's house and saw the warmth and affection in Nakadai's family. For the first time, Reia shared the things she had been going through with Nakadai, and Nakadai was shocked to hear it. Nakadai thought it was really strange for Danakuru to take photos of his daughter without clothes on. She also suggested that Rhea ask Danakuru to stop doing that. However, Rhea was still too afraid to anger her father. Nakadai also mentioned that she had fought their father before and that fighting with one's dad was a normal part of family life. But after that conversation, Rhea regretted sharing all her secrets with Nakadai. Meanwhile, Chihiro had been waiting for Rhea inside the building for a while and started feeling worried about her. He was afraid Rhea might have gotten lost in the forest or even slipped and fallen into the river, although he wasn't sure if Rhea would do something that dangerous. He looked out the window and was shocked to see Rhea struggling to climb a steep hill. Chihiro rushed out to help her on a ride just as Rhea was about to slip. Fortunately, Chihiro grabbed her hand firmly, pulling her back and preventing her from falling. He even teased Rhea, calling her a lady who can't survive without a caretaker. Rhea got annoyed at that and claimed she could climb the hill by herself. Chihiro then jokingly asked if she wanted him to let go of her hand, which of course she didn't. They returned to the abandoned building and Chihiro asked why Rhea felt the need to climb the hill. Rhea simply replied that she saw the plant she was looking for growing near the grave at the top, and she thought it would be faster to get there by climbing. Chihiro called her a reckless rich girl, but Rhea didn't care. She said that even if she fell and died, Chihiro could just bring her back to life as a zombie. Chihiro was startled by this, especially since he hadn't even managed to revive Babu yet. He also pointed out that he had never said he would bring Rhea back to life if she died. Rhea made it clear, though, that she was begging Chihiro to revive her if that ever happened to her. Rhea finally found the courage to ask Danakuru to stop his actions. She refused to be photographed without clothes. Danakuru then asked why she was rejecting this, claiming it was a normal thing for parents to document their child's physical growth. Rhea shouted back, saying it was not normal and unlike other families. She wanted them to be a normal family. She wanted to live a normal life just like everyone else. Danakuru then asked if someone had said something to her, but Rhea denied it, though Danakuru kept pressing. Rhea grew angrier and told him that anyone would find what he was doing strange. Danakuru simply responded that Rhea didn't understand. The only thing that was truly real in this world was Danakuru's love for her. He then walked away, but Rhea was left feeling deeply unsettled. Sure enough, the next day a friend told Rhea that Nakadai was moving away, saying that something had happened to Nakadai's father. He had been forced to quit his job. Rhea knew Danakuru was behind this. Once again, he had interfered. Rhea ran to see Nakadai, relieved she could still catch her before she moved. Nakadai was going to a cat shelter because her new home wouldn't allow pets. Nakadai's family had changed and she was angry with Rhea for saying something to Danakuru. Nakadai felt that she had never interfered in Rhea's life, and now she regretted ever being friends with her. Nakadai left Rhea standing there, feeling devastated. Rhea became more convinced that Danakuru had taken everything from her. Danakuru explained to Rhea that happiness means something different to everyone. He believed that the purity of his love for her was something no one else could understand, and he told her that one day she would realize how deep his love was, deeper than anyone else's. He also warned Rhea that if she didn't understand, someone else would suffer. Danakuru insisted that Rhea didn't realize how much better her life was compared to others. Then Danakuru demanded that Rhea take off her clothes so he could take her picture for her birthday this time. Rhea couldn't stop him this time. She realized that if her happiness came at the cost of someone else's suffering, she would rather live in sadness. Rhea showed Chihiro the poisonous plant she had collected. It was a hydrangea. Chihiro asked why she had chosen a plant that grew all over town. Rhea explained that many people didn't realize how dangerous it was. It was a symbol of her family, and she had many in their garden. Even when she was little, her father had warned her never to put it in her mouth. Suddenly, Chihiro remembered that his forgetful grandfather used to eat hydrangea leaves all the time. Rhea was surprised and wondered if the plant's effects vary depending on the person. They decided to try it out. Chihiro crushed the hydrangea leaves into his potion mixture, and after adding all the ingredients, the potion was ready to test. Chihiro carefully took Babu's body out of the icebox and with care placed the mixture in Babu's mouth. Both Chihiro and Rhea were hopeful that this time the experiment would work, but after waiting for a while, there were still no signs of life from Babu. They concluded that once again the experiment had failed. Chihiro and Rhea began to pack up, getting ready to head home. Rhea asked what other poisonous plants they might try tomorrow, but Chihiro refused. He felt sorry for Babu, saying he couldn't keep forcing things for his own selfish reasons. He decided it was time to bury Babu, and Rhea agreed. Chihiro thanked Rhea for helping him, and Rhea nervously asked if they wouldn't meet again at this place, but quickly got embarrassed and said goodbye before heading off. Shigeru noticed that Rhea was walking with a slight limp. Rhea mentioned that she had twisted her ankle when she slipped earlier, but said she was fine and continued walking. But Chihiro, worried, ran up to her and lifted her onto his back, much to her surprise as she shouted in shock. He then placed her on the back of his bike and asked her to hold the icebox with Babu's body inside. As they rode, Rhea's mind wandered, wondering why she had been born into a family so different from others. She longed for a normal life, to laugh freely like everyone else. She wished she could be born again and find freedom. If that wasn't possible, then maybe it would be better to just die. Rhea asked Chihiro to stop the bike near a tunnel not far from her home. Shigeru, confused, asked if her house wasn't up the hill and offered to take her all the way to the front door. But Rhea refused, explaining that she never used the front entrance. She planned to sneak in through a secret door hidden in the bushes, and fortunately, her father hadn't grown suspicious yet. Shigeru wondered how terrifying Rhea's father must be. Before leaving, he reminded Rhea not to be late for Babu's funeral tomorrow, and she agreed. Rhea slipped through the hydrangea bushes, and Chihiro continued on his way. Little did they know, Ganekuru was watching them from afar through binoculars. When Rhea reached the back door of her house, Ganekuru called out to her and immediately slapped her across the face. Ranko was soaking in Chihiro's bathtub when she suddenly heard the sound of Chihiro's bike stopping outside. She greeted him from the bathroom window, catching Chihiro off guard. Shocked, Shigeru asked why Ranko was in his bathroom. Ranko casually responded that she was just returning his DVD. Annoyed, Chihiro questioned why Ranko was using his family's bathtub like it was her own, but Ranko reminded him that since they were cousins, it wasn't a big deal. Ranko then started interrogating Chihiro, asking where he had been this late at night. Chihiro made up an excuse, saying he went to the store to buy ice cream and took a short break by the river. Ranko found his explanation odd, especially since Mero had told her that Chihiro had been going out every night since Babu died, always carrying that ice cream storage box with him. Chihiro continued to defend himself, claiming that he was just playing with a raft at the river. Curious, Ranko approached the ice cream box and demanded to know what was really inside. Panicking, Shigeru begged her not to open it. Teasing him, Ranko asked if Chihiro's zombie obsession was starting to get the better of him, suggesting he might be doing something inappropriate with Babu's body. Ignoring Chihiro's pleas, Ranko opened the lid of the box and suddenly something jumped out. Shigeru was overjoyed. This meant his magic had worked and Babu was alive again. The event happened so quickly that Ranko didn't get a good look at what had come out of the box. Meanwhile, Rhea was feeling heartbroken because she wouldn't be able to see Chihiro for Babu's funeral tomorrow. Danichiro had forbidden her from leaving the house, not even for school. Secretly, Rhea had taken a small portion of the magic potion she and Chihiro had made together. Even though it probably wouldn't bring her back to life, it still contained poison. Desperate, she drank the potion, hoping it would kill her. Rhea had lost all hope in her life, feeling that it would be better to die than to continue living in such misery. Chihiro recalls the time he gave Rhea a ride home, and throughout the journey, neither of them spoke a word. Rhea simply enjoyed the trip with Chihiro, as it was the first time she could go out with someone else. Before this, her father had always forbidden her from going out with her friends. Chihiro regrets that moment a little. He should have asked her what she was thinking, or maybe about her hopes for the future. If he had done so, that might have been his last chance to help Rhea. Danichiro's rage became uncontrollable when he found out that Rhea had secretly left the house to meet Chihiro. When Rhea returned, he didn't hesitate to slap her multiple times. He strictly forbade her from leaving the house, even stopping her from going to school. Rhea couldn't stand Danichiro's oppressive behavior anymore, so she decided to drink the potion Chihiro had made to resurrect Babu. Rhea hoped the poison in the potion would kill her, but unfortunately, things didn't go as she expected. She woke up the next morning and she was ready to head to school, still hoping her father would allow her to go. She went to the dining room to see her father and mother. Rhea greeted them and Danichiro welcomed her. Aria asked Rhea why she had broken her promise and snuck out of the house the previous night. Rhea apologized for what happened, saying that she had just wanted to take a walk in the forest to admire the beautiful moon. Aria, clearly upset, warned Rhea to be careful with her actions, also pointing out that every decision Rhea made could affect Aria's reputation as the school principal. Danichiro then warned Aria not to scold Rhea again. Aria left the dining room, ignoring Rhea. Danichiro apologized to Rhea for hitting her the night before. Rei responded by saying it was all her fault and thanked Danakuru for everything he had done for her. Danakuru praised Rhea for being a good girl and understanding him. He assured Rhea that he was the only one capable of protecting her. Danakuru then asked why Rhea was still wearing her school uniform when he had clearly told her the night before that she was no longer allowed to go to school, instructing her to study at home. Rhea apologized again and agreed to comply. Suddenly, one of Danakuru's men arrived and asked Rhea to leave and change out of her uniform. She left the dining room and Danakuru's men closed the door, as it seemed they had something important to discuss. Rhea didn't go far but tried to listen to their conversation from behind the door. Her father's men had discovered the identity of the boy who had been with her the night before. They had learned that Chihiro attended Shiryu High School and was the son of the head priest at Shiryu Temple. Danakuru ordered his men to castrate Chihiro as a warning so that he would never approach Rhea again. Rhea was shocked to hear this, knowing that Chihiro was in great danger. Shigeru tried calling out to Babu, who was up in a tree. Ranko still couldn't believe why Chihiro made a magic potion to raise the dead and used it on Babu's corpse. She never imagined Chihiro would do such a thing, especially since he's the son of a chief priest. Mero wasn't surprised at all by her older brother's behavior. She had known for a long time that Chihiro was a weird guy who was obsessed with zombies. Still, she didn't expect him to go this far. Chihiro admitted that what he did might have been cruel, but thanks to it, Babu really did come back to life. Wouldn't everyone be happy if their family members came back? Ranko was happy Babu was alive again, but she still wasn't sure if it was truly Babu. Shigeru then pointed out that Babu's meow still sounded the same as before, as Babu was never able to make a normal cat sound when he was alive. But Ranko remained doubtful, especially since Babu now had white eyes and seemed more expressive than before. Shigeru and Ranko continued debating whether this was the real Babu. Ranko was even worried that Babu might attack people like the zombies in the movies and those bitten could turn into zombies themselves. Shigeru, however, was confident that Babu wouldn't behave like that. Suddenly, Babu started running really fast as if chasing something. Shigeru panicked and ran after him, with Ranko following behind. Mero reminded her brother that he had left his bag behind, but Chihiro yelled back saying it looked like he would be skipping school today. Jagoro, hearing all the commotion, asked Mero what was happening. Mero told him that Chihiro had adopted another cat and managed to bring Babu back to life. Hearing that, Jagoro was overjoyed. Chihiro tried to grab hold of Babu, who was right in front of him, but he failed. He wasn't too surprised, though, since Babu was usually easy to catch. Ranko asked if it was safe to touch Babu with bare hands. They kept following Babu as he ran along the fences of people's houses. Chihiro told Ranko she should just head to school since she probably had sports practice, but Ranko said it was her duty as his older sister figure to keep an eye on him. Eventually, they reached a narrow, long drainage tunnel. Without hesitation, Chihiro went in to keep following Babu. Ranko couldn't believe he was actually doing this. Meanwhile, Rei was sneaking out of her house through the back door, passing through the hydrangea bushes. Arya clearly saw her leaving from the window but didn't care. Danakuru passed by and Arya offered him some wine, but he ignored her as usual. Arya knew Danakuru had long since stopped paying attention to her. The tunnel Babu went through was incredibly narrow and long, but Chihiro wasn't giving up. Ranko, reluctantly, followed behind him. Chihiro didn't even know how far the tunnel stretched. Ranko felt the tunnel's walls were scraping against her and her body was getting stuck. She couldn't move at all, but Chihiro ignored her and kept going, leaving her behind. Ranko was frustrated that Chihiro was so focused on Babu and didn't show her the slightest bit of concern. No matter how loudly she shouted, Chihiro kept getting further and further away. Whether he heard her or not, Ranko was furious and called him an idiot. Finally, Chihiro reached the end of the tunnel, which opened up to a lake near a forest below Rei's house. It turned out Babu just wanted to get a drink of water before continuing on his way. Near the school's baseball field, Yasutaka and Moji sat together looking out at the garden. Yasutaka asked Moji if he liked baseball, and it turned out Moji only enjoyed watching it. Then Yasutaka asked if Moji liked girls, and Moji responded with a similar answer, saying he only liked looking at them. Yasutaka, curious, commented that this might be why Moji hadn't made any progress and then playfully started tickling Moji. He poked Moji's chest, making him squirm with laughter. Yasutaka kept teasing him, asking if it felt good, while Moji just laughed, trying to hold in his giggles. Yasutaka seemed to enjoy messing with Moji, but Moji still didn't fully get what Yasutaka was trying to say. Yasutaka mentioned that from where they were sitting, they had a good view of the Senka High School students. Suddenly, Rei appeared, calling out to them from behind the fence, asking if they had seen Chihiro. Both Yasutaka and Mogi were shocked. Yasutaka, especially, was thrown off as he couldn't believe that Rei, the girl he had secretly admired, was actually talking to him. Rei repeated her question, asking for Furuya Chihiro, the first-year student. Moji then told her that Chihiro hadn't come to school yet. Yasutaka, still curious, wondered why Rei was looking for Chihiro. Rei, somewhat nervously, replied that Chihiro was about to be castrated, thanked them, and quickly left. Yasutaka was left in stunned silence, unable to process the fact that Chihiro, of all people, was somehow connected to Rei. Meanwhile, Rei was still searching for Chihiro, feeling anxious after her interaction with Yasutaka. She wondered if she had said something strange. As she continued walking through town, one of Danichiru's henchmen spotted her. The henchman immediately called Danichiru, informing him that Rei was in town. Danichiru instructed his henchmen not to rush into capturing her, but to continue following her. Danichiru was frustrated, not understanding why his daughter was being so stubborn and refusing to listen to him. Rei kept walking until she reached a slope, still searching for Chihiro. At the same time, Chihiro was wandering near the cemetery, trying to find Babu, when he realized that Ranko wasn't with him. He grumbled to himself, wondering where Ranko was since she had said she would watch over him, but now she was nowhere to be found. The sky was getting cloudy, and it looked like it was about to rain. Suddenly, Chihiro spotted Babu in the bushes, eating hydrangea leaves, and was shocked. Chihiro then remembered that this was the same place where Rei had gotten the hydrangea flowers the night before. To his surprise, he then noticed Rei herself limping along the cliff above. Rei thought Chihiro was waiting for her at the old building, so she was heading there, hoping to meet him again. She felt incredibly guilty and didn't want Chihiro to get into trouble with Danichiru because of her. Suddenly, Danichiru called out to her, asking where she was going. Startled, Rei turned to see Danichiru and his henchmen standing behind her. Danichiru calmly suggested that while it was nice to go for a walk in the woods, this was getting a bit far. Chihiro watched the entire scene from below, confused about what was going on. Danichiru tried to coax Rei into coming back home, saying it wasn't too late to forgive her for her actions. He reminded her that she was his daughter, a bright and intelligent girl, and a member of the Senka family. As he reached out to touch her, Rei firmly pushed him away, telling him no for the first time in her life. This bold move shocked Danichiru. Chihiro, still watching, couldn't understand what they were talking about. Danichiru, stunned by Rei's defiance, asked her to explain her behavior. Rei finally spoke up, telling him that while she knew she was his daughter, that didn't mean he owned her heart and body. All she wanted was a little freedom. Danichiru then asked her what kind of freedom she was looking for. Was it the freedom to leave home or the freedom to love someone? Rei stood silent for a moment, but Danichiru forcefully grabbed her hand, trying to drag her back home. Babu, who had been watching the whole time, climbed up the slope and chased after them. Rei kept begging her father to let her go just for today, but Danichiru firmly refused, knowing that Rei only wanted to meet Chihiro. Babu approached them, and Danichiru, startled, called the cat filthy. He became frightened, knowing that he was allergic. As Babu got closer, Danichiru tried to shoo the cat away, terrified his allergy would flare up again. Rei couldn't believe what she was seeing. She shook free of Danichiru's grip and rushed over to Babu, unable to comprehend that the cat had somehow come back to life. Danichiru shouted at her not to touch the dirty animal, but Rei ignored him. She knelt beside Babu, asking if Chihiro had perfected the potion or if perhaps the concoction he made last night really worked. Suddenly, Danichiru stepped forward and tried to whip Babu, but Rei quickly blocked the blow. The whip struck Rei instead, causing her to lose her balance and tumble down the slope. Danichiru panicked, unable to believe what had just happened. Just before she fell, Rei caught sight of Chihiro, but it was too late. Her body crashed onto a sharp rock and then tumbled into a patch of hydrangeas. Bloody, Rei died instantly. Danichiru stood frozen, utterly devastated by the sight of his daughter's lifeless body. As the rain began to pour down, soaking everything in its path, Chihiro rushed to Rei's side, overwhelmed with sorrow. He screamed, begging Rei to say something, desperate for her to still be alive. Chihiro muttered that Rei didn't need to die for real, that what he said earlier was just a joke. But now he realized Rei's request to be brought back to life had been more serious than he ever imagined. He broke down in tears, devastated that he couldn't save her. As he mourned, Babu approached Rei's body and began licking the blood from her hand. Just as Chihiro was about to walk away, he suddenly heard someone call his name. He froze, unable to believe his ears. It was Ra. Her lifeless body was rising, stumbling toward him, softly whispering his name. Shigeru stood in disbelief, unsure of what he was witnessing. He hadn't given her any resurrection potion. None of this made sense. Danichiru's men were equally stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened to their master's daughter. They tried to calm him down, but even they couldn't explain what they were seeing. Rhea slowly approached Chihiro, reminding him that he had promised to take responsibility for her. She then embraced him, her grip gentle but firm. Babu wagged his tail, clearly happy to see Rhea back on her feet once again. Danichiru saw Rhea in his dream covered in blood as she stood up again. He reached out to hold Rhea's hand but was shocked to find no pulse in her wrist. Desperately, Danichiru begged her not to leave him, but Rhea refused. She told him that she was no longer his daughter because she was no longer human. Danichiru soaked in the bathtub, surrounded by pictures of Rhea, filled with regret over how things had come to this. The household staff gossiped about Rhea, seemingly aware that the reason she often snuck out was to meet a young man. They also knew that Rhea had run away from home. Arya entered the room, interrupting their conversation, and the staff immediately greeted her. Arya asked what they meant by Rhea running away, and the staff told her that Danichiru had informed them of Rhea's departure when he got home. Arya then asked where Danichiru was, and the staff informed her that he had been in the bathroom since his return. Arya headed toward the bathroom, instructing the staff to attend to their other duties. As the staff resumed gossiping, they commented on how Arya smelled of alcohol and how Danichiru no longer paid her any attention, which had caused Arya many problems. Arya entered the bathroom and called for her husband. She asked what he meant by Rhea running away. Danichiru told her that Rhea had died, then came back to life, only to leave him again. Arya didn't understand what he was talking about. What mattered most to her was ensuring the news of Rhea running away didn't spread, as it could jeopardize her position as the head of the school. She asked if Danichiru knew where Rhea was now. One of Danichiru's men arrived, saying he suspected Rhea was with a high school boy named Furuya Chihiro. Arya asked who Chihiro was, and Danichiru believed that Chihiro had deceived Rhea and was responsible for everything. Enraged, Danichiru stood up from the bathtub, shouting that he would rescue Rhea and purify her heart and soul with his love. Senka High School, an all-girls school, had a unique routine. Every student had to sew for 10 minutes before class started. This activity wasn't just to sharpen their skills, but also to help them calm their minds, and they did this every day. Rhea had been sewing since she was a child, long before attending school, which was why she was able to stitch up her own wound. Chihiro helped hold her stomach while she stitched it, making him a little nervous. Once finished, Rhea wrapped the wound with a bandage. Being a zombie made her laugh with delight since she no longer felt any pain. Chihiro pulled her aside, asking if she didn't understand that she was dead. Her body was cold, her heart no longer beat, and her pupils were dilated. He was puzzled as to how Rhea could still laugh. Rhea cheerfully replied that this was the first time she had ever been in a boy's room, leaving Chihiro speechless. After gym class, Ranko changed out of her uniform. A friend invited Ranko to find something sweet on the way home, suggesting they visit a nice cafe along the roadside. However, Ranko declined, explaining she had other plans. She was still upset at Chihiro for leaving her in that small tunnel while chasing after Babu and vowed to get back at him. She accidentally mentioned that she would strangle him, which confused her friend. Ranko brushed it off and quickly left. Rhea was enjoying the evening view from Chihiro's bedroom window, the air feeling cool after the rain. Shigeru was confused, wondering if Rhea planned to stay the night in his room or even stay forever. He glanced at Rhea, noticing her slightly open back, and then got nervous when she asked if he could see her. He quickly replied that he didn't see anything. It turned out Rhea was pointing out that Babu was sitting on a tree branch. Shigeru felt relieved as he had been worried about Babu. He called out to Babu, and when Babu turned, his black eyes had returned to normal ever since eating the hydrangea leaves. After hearing Babu's meow, Rhea mentioned that something seemed odd about Babu's nose, wondering if he was okay. But Chihiro reassured her, explaining that Babu had always been like that during his life. He had even been taken to the vet, but they said it couldn't be cured. His meow sounded like that, which is why he was called Babu. It seemed like Babu didn't understand how much Chihiro worried about him. Babu meowed again, and Rhea said that Babu was saying the tree felt really comfortable. Chihiro was shocked that Rhea could understand what Babu's meows meant. Rhea explained that she just had a feeling Babu was saying that. Chihiro started wondering if they had some special zombie language. To him, Reia's personality hadn't changed at all since becoming a zombie. Reia then asked if something was wrong, and Chihiro said it was nothing. Reia teased him, asking if she should act more like a zombie, and then began mimicking one. Chihiro stayed silent, honestly thinking Reia was already beautiful enough as she was. He asked her if she had any regrets about becoming a zombie. Reia said she didn't regret it at all because she believed Chihiro would take responsibility. Chihiro asked her what kind of responsibility she had in mind. Reia requested that he take her shopping, visit art galleries together, or watch zombie movies with her. She had so many other requests like going to amusement parks and other places. Reia just wanted to experience the life of a normal girl, something she had never been able to do. Chihiro found it strange that although Reia was a zombie, she wanted to live a normal girl's life. Reia asked if that was weird or if Chihiro couldn't do those things with her. She grabbed Chihiro, causing him to feel a bit of pain. Reia's strength was truly incredible this time. Reia then tried to move her face closer to his, intending to kiss him, but her attempt was interrupted by Ranko's shout from outside Chihiro's house. Ranko yelled for Chihiro, telling him to come out. Chihiro looked out the window and saw Ranko, who was mad at him for leaving her earlier that morning. Ranko seemed to notice someone in Chihiro's room and asked if there was someone with him. Reia quickly hid again. Chihiro said he was alone in his room. Ranko was about to head up to his room, but Chihiro stopped her and asked to talk outside. Ranko questioned why she couldn't go to his room, and Chihiro responded that he was busy with guy stuff. Ranko teased him, asking if he thought she'd be shocked to find porn magazines in his room. Chihiro hurried downstairs and told Reia to stay where she was. Chihiro invited Ranko to the riverside to talk. Meanwhile, Reia was feeling embarrassed as she thought back to what she was about to do to Chihiro. Chihiro repeatedly apologized to Ranko, admitting that he had completely forgotten about her. But Ranko wasn't satisfied with his apology, so she angrily started choking him, tightening her grip as she grew more upset. Then Ranko asked about how Babu was doing. Chihiro reassured her that Babu was fine and hadn't attacked anyone. Ranko told Chihiro to get a phone so she could reach him, but Chihiro insisted he didn't need one. Ranko shifted the conversation back to Babu, asking what would happen to him in the future and whether Babu could stay the way he was now. Chihiro was still unsure, deep in thought. Suddenly, Yasutaka's voice called out to Chihiro. Yasutaka ran over and begged Chihiro to introduce him to Reia. He started worshipping Chihiro, wondering why Chihiro had never told him that he knew Reia. Ranko found Yasutaka's behavior disgusting, and Moji commented to her that Yasutaka had been acting crazy lately. Ranko then asked if the Reia Yasutaka was talking about was Sanka Reia, to which Yasutaka confirmed. No wonder Chihiro had acted suspicious when asking about Reia before. However, Chihiro denied it, saying it was just a coincidence. Yasutaka got upset at the idea of it being just a coincidence, since he had always struggled to approach girls. Moji, on the other hand, was relieved, thinking this meant that Chihiro wasn't only interested in zombies. But Chihiro immediately denied that, firmly stating that he was only attracted to zombie girls. He almost let slip that Reia wasn't human anymore. Reia had indeed become a zombie, just like the kind Chihiro had always dreamed about, and that zombie was currently in his room. He couldn't help but smile at the thought, which made Ranko suspicious of his odd grin. As evening fell, Reia started getting impatient, feeling like she'd been waiting for Chihiro for too long. She also wondered about the girl she had seen with Chihiro, noting that the girl was wearing a Senka High School uniform. Reia couldn't help but wonder if that girl was close to Chihiro. Feeling restless, Reia decided to leave the room, assuming no one else was in the house. She undressed, thinking it was perfectly fine for a zombie to take a bath. Once under the shower, Reia noticed something strange. She couldn't feel the temperature of the water, whether it was hot or cold, but it still felt refreshing. It was her first time using such a small bathroom. She spotted a bath sponge she had never seen before. Its slightly firm but flexible texture made her mistake it for an exercise tool, so she squeezed it. As she was playing around with it, suddenly, Jaguru walked into the bathroom. He stared at Reia in shock, and she quickly turned her back to him. Jaguru rushed toward her, hugging her and mistaking her for someone named Sada, asking if she had come back to life. Reia pushed him away, explaining that she wasn't Sada. Jaguru tried to chase after her, but Mero, who had just arrived home, blocked his path. Mero asked what was going on, and Jaguru exclaimed that Sada had come back to life and returned to him. Mero was confused, saying she wasn't sure if he meant alive or not, but she pointed out that their late grandmother's name wasn't Sada, it was Kyo. Jaguru finally realized his mistake. Rhea was still in shock from what had just happened, hoping Jagero didn't actually see her. She started reminiscing about how, around this time of night, she would usually be sitting down to dinner with her father. But now, at the same hour, she was outside of her home and, more than that, in a boy's room. Today had been an extremely long day for Rhea, but she was happy to finally be free. She hoped things would continue like this moving forward. It was now evening and Chihiro returned home, grumbling about Yasutaka's behavior earlier. He wasn't sure how Yasutaka had managed to talk him into things, as he was usually so stubborn, but it seemed he was really eager to meet Rhea. Mero greeted Chihiro and offered him dinner since she had made stewed giblets. However, Chihiro said he wasn't hungry and immediately headed upstairs to his room. It seemed Mero hadn't yet noticed Rhea's presence. Chihiro entered his room and apologized for making Rhea wait so long, but he was instantly shocked to see her lying on the floor, completely naked. He asked why she was lying on the floor like that. Rhea replied that she had just taken a bath. Chihiro, worried, warned her about catching a cold, but Rhea assured him that she would be fine since, as a zombie, she couldn't get sick. Chihiro felt relieved, but then realized that this conversation was actually happening with a zombie he had dreamed about for so long. He almost got a nosebleed just thinking about it. He moved closer and asked if she wasn't worried about getting a stomach ache either, to which Rhea replied that zombies don't get stomach aches either. Chihiro was ecstatic, especially when Rhea called his name in a soft, affectionate tone. He was overjoyed, feeling like all his dreams were coming true, nearly losing control of himself. Chihiro told Rhea to get dressed, but she revealed that she couldn't actually move her body. She felt like her body was stiffening more and more. Chihiro asked if that was why her speech had started to sound a bit slurred, because her voice wasn't as clear as before. He wondered if the potion was wearing off. He grabbed Rhea's hand and noticed that her pale skin was becoming even stiffer. Was this rigor mortis, a stiffening that occurs in a corpse? Chihiro tried to reassure Rhea, telling her that this was normal and nothing to worry about. Rhea praised Chihiro for knowing so much, which made her so happy that Chihiro didn't even realize it. Even though she still had human consciousness, her body remained that of a corpse. This meant that if nothing was done, her body would eventually decompose, leaving only bones in a matter of a month. Chihiro couldn't just sit by and do nothing. He remembered Rhea's wish for him to help her experience the normal life of a girl that she never had before. Chihiro gently lifted Rhea onto the bed and covered her with a blanket. He needed to find a way to preserve her body as soon as possible. Tonight marks the first time Rhea is staying over at Chihiro's house. Chihiro turned on the air conditioner in his room and set the temperature to be very cold, intending to help preserve Rhea's body. With the cold temperature, her body wouldn't deteriorate so easily. After setting up the AC, Chihiro left his room, wished her goodnight, and headed to the shrine. Tonight, he needed to stay there. As he walked away, Chihiro couldn't stop thinking about Rhea. He was worried about her body, which was going through rigor mortis. If this kept going on, her body would eventually rot and fall apart little by little. Chihiro needed to find a way to preserve her body before it got worse. With those thoughts in his head, he tried to fall asleep. The next morning, Chihiro went to Mero's room to ask her about a book on how to preserve corpses that she had read the day before. The book was actually about embalming and using special formulas to preserve bodies, and Chihiro was eager to borrow it. However, Mero told him that one of her classmates had borrowed the book. Chihiro found it strange that a middle school student would be interested in embalming corpses, but Mero innocently pointed out that middle school students are simply those who have graduated from grade school but aren't in high school yet. Mero asked why her older brother wanted the book, but Chihiro brushed it off, saying it was nothing, and left the room. Mero thought her brother had been acting strangely lately. Chihiro then went out to find formaldehyde but was overwhelmed by the strong smell. He needed to make sure that his family and neighbors wouldn't notice it. As Chihiro stared at Rhea's still body, she looked like she was simply sleeping. Suddenly, Chihiro's father called out to Chihiro and Mero, asking them to come down for breakfast. Chihiro hesitated, feeling uneasy about leaving Rhea alone in his bed. He decided to move her into the closet. Quickly, he emptied the bottom shelf, laying out a mattress and pillow inside. Struggling, Chihiro tried to move Rhea's body, but then he slipped and fell. His heart raced as Rhea's body ended up lying on top of him. Hearing the commotion, Chihiro's father shouted from downstairs, asking what was going on. Chihiro yelled back that he'd be down soon. Finally, he managed to place Rhea's body in the closet. Chihiro told Rhea that she should be able to move her body again tonight. He knew the closet was cramped, so they asked her to hang in there. Rei didn't respond, of course, because she couldn't move at all. Suddenly, Chihiro heard a growling noise and assumed that Rei might be feeling hungry. He closed the closet and promised that one day she'd be able to move again. And when that time came, he would make sure to have something for her to eat. Chihiro then went to join his family for breakfast. It was the usual meal with the same typical questions from his grandfather. This time, his grandfather asked if they could stop putting fish paste in the miso soup. Chihiro's father replied, as always, that it wasn't fish paste but tofu. It was another ordinary day in Chihiro's life. But as they ate, Chihiro suddenly remembered Rei's wish to live like a normal girl. He turned to Mero and asked her what normal meant. Mero, confused, asked why her older brother was asking something like that out of the blue. Chihiro just brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Meanwhile, Jaguru was still questioning the fish paste in the miso soup, and once again, Chihiro's father gave the same response. Ranko had just finished delivering a food order to the Senka family's house when suddenly, her junior appeared from behind the fence. Ranko was startled to see them. The junior asked what Ranko was doing there, and Ranko explained that she was just doing her job, delivering an order from the restaurant. Then Ranko asked what her junior was doing there. The junior said that Ria was their classmate and that lately she hadn't been attending school, which made the junior worried. That's why they had come to check on her. Ranko suggested that they could have just come through the front door. Then she noted that her junior must have a lot of free time and she got ready to leave. However, the junior kept following her, mentioning that Rhea was the school idol and of course Ranko was also an idol to them. Ranko brushed off the compliment, not needing that kind of attention. The junior continues, saying that Rhea had seemed different lately. She was still beautiful, but recently she looked sad. The fact that she hadn't shown up at school with no explanation made everyone worried. Ranko gave only minimal responses, which led the junior to remark that maybe Ranko wasn't interested because Rhea was just her junior. But for the first-year students, everyone knew who Rhea was. Once again, the junior emphasized how beautiful Rhea was, showing Ranko pictures of her on their phone. They proudly showed off some particularly graceful shots of Ra, including photos of Rhea with them and some other friends. The junior also mentioned that the servants at Rhea's house seemed really anxious, implying that something was definitely going on with the Senka family. Ranko admitted that there did seem to be some sort of commotion, but she wasn't interested in continuing the conversation and left the junior behind. Today was a school holiday, and as usual, Chihiro's family was cleaning the temple together. Mero was dusting the walls, Chihiro was mopping the floor, while their grandfather lounged around watching everyone work. Chihiro felt conflicted because at that moment he really didn't want to be doing this. He was still worried about Rei's condition. As he mopped, his father suddenly appeared in front of him, asking if it was true that Chihiro was now taking care of another cat. His father expressed disappointment, wondering how Chihiro could do that so soon after Babu's death. Chihiro denied it, explaining that Babu had come back to life. His father didn't believe something so absurd, but Chihiro insisted that their grandfather had seen Babu alive as well. Jagura confirmed it, saying he really had seen Babu. Chihiro was relieved that his grandfather believed him, and they both started laughing together, with Chihiro mimicking Jagura's laugh. In the middle of their laughter, Jagura mentioned that Sada and Babu had come back to life. Chihiro was confused who was Sada. He thought they were only talking about Babu. Mero and Chihiro's father thought they were just joking around. Then, out of nowhere, Jagura said that the world should thank him for the resurrection potion he had created. Chihiro was shocked and immediately asked Jagura to repeat what he had just said. Jagura asked if he meant about Sada, but that wasn't what Chihiro wanted to hear. He was more interested in the resurrection potion his grandfather had mentioned. Jagura then licked Chihiro's nose, switching back to his usual forgetful self, and didn't remember saying anything about it. He excused himself to go take a bath. Chihiro tried to chase after him, but Chihiro's father stopped him, saying that Chihiro had to finish cleaning the temple and couldn't skip out early again. Mero chimed in, saying her older brother was really embarrassing. Meanwhile, Babu was lounging on the roof of Chihiro's house. Chihiro was still in disbelief that his grandfather might have created the resurrection potion, but if anyone could make such a thing, Chihiro was convinced it would be his grandfather. If that were true, then maybe Jaguru also knew how to preserve a body that had been brought back to life. Mero came over to her brother, confident that his room was as messy as usual, so she said she would clean it after this. Chihiro apologized to his sister for troubling her, but suddenly, he realized something and hurriedly stopped her from going to his room. Chihiro lied, saying that there was no need for Mero to clean his room today because recently, He had taken a liking to cleaning it himself. He laughed awkwardly to reassure her, and Mero, finding her brother odd, decided to listen to him. Ranko arrived, bringing the food order. Shigeru asked why she was still coming around. Ranko replied that she just wanted to stop by after delivering the order. She handed the food to Mero, who thanked her warmly. Shigeru's father commented that he thought his son was selfish, and maybe he needed someone mature like Ranko to be his wife. Shigeru was shocked by this, but Ranko, excited, thought Shigeru's father was just joking. Embarrassed, she ended up smacking Chihiro in the face. Shigeru continued mopping the floor while Ranko asked if he'd heard the news about the princess from the Sanka family running away from home yesterday. The Sanka family was one of the restaurant's regular customers. Whenever Ranko delivered orders there was always a big commotion. Ranko even began to realize that someone like Ria also had her own problems. Ranko started teasing Chihiro by making up a story. Maybe Rhea had risen from the dead, reunited with her boyfriend, and they began a forbidden love, eventually eloping together. They spent the night at a seaside hotel, two people who weren't supposed to be together, yet they decided to unite their bodies and souls. Ranko then asked Chihiro if Rhea was his type. She mentioned that Yasutaka had said yesterday that Rhea was very close to Chihiro. Chihiro denied it, saying he just happened to meet Rhea while walking and they chatted briefly. Besides, why should he discuss this with Ranko? Ranko, considering herself like an older sister to Chihiro, said she had to know about all of his relationships, but Chihiro still refused to admit any connection with Rhea. Ranko playfully choked Chihiro, and he understood not to argue with her. She then excused herself, saying she had to help out at home and apologized for bothering him. Chihiro, still in pain, was left wondering what Ranko's behavior really meant. Chihiro's father yelled for Chihiro to mop the back of the temple, and he complied. Suddenly, Ranko stopped in her tracks and asked to borrow another one of Chihiro's zombie DVDs before leaving. Chihiro was still thinking about the chaos going on at Rhea's house. It was natural for Rhea's father to be stressed, but Chihiro knew he couldn't let Rhea go home in her current condition. Ranko entered Chihiro's room and was surprised by how cold it was. She couldn't believe Chihiro had the air conditioning on at this hour, so she turned it off. She struggled to choose a zombie DVD because the titles all seemed so similar. Meanwhile, Mara was hanging out the temple cushions when she noticed Babu walking across the rooftop. Ranko tried to pick a DVD using Eeny Meeny Miny Mo, but it didn't work because she had apparently already watched them all. Suddenly, she spotted a long hair on the floor, a black, long strand that definitely wasn't Chihiro's. Curious, she approached the closet and opened the door, but found nothing. Maybe it was just her imagination. In fact, Rhea's body had moved to the top shelf, and she was watching Ranko from above. Chihiro suddenly remembered that Rhea had seemed hungry earlier. He was confused about what Rhea could possibly eat, given the condition of her stomach. Rhea lunged at Ranko from the top shelf. Ranko didn't know who was attacking her at first, but the figure held her tightly. When Ranko saw her face, she realized it was Rhea. Rhea sniffed her body and started groping Ranko's chest, squeezing harder and harder. Ranko, in pain, begged Rhea to stop. Ranko noticed blood dripping from Rhea's stomach and pointed out that she was seriously injured, but Rhea just laughed. Ranko suggested they call an ambulance, but Rhea's behavior seemed odd to her. Ranko began to wonder if Rhea was a zombie. Rhea tore Ranko's clothes open at the chest, and Ranko screamed loudly, startling Chihiro, Chihiro's father, and Mero. Chihiro rushed back to his house after hearing the scream. He flung open the door to his room and saw Rhea licking Ranko's chest. Rhea was no longer in rigor mortis. Chihiro quickly pulled Rhea off of Ranko. Rhea called Chihiro's name, got up, and lunged at him, kissing him on the lips. Ranko could only watch. Rhea then wrapped her arms tightly around Chihiro, squeezing him so hard that he was in pain and couldn't break free. Ranko, shocked, screamed loudly. Chihiro always dreamed about a beautiful zombie girl, imagining romantic situations with her. But now that dream has turned into reality since Rhea became a zombie. Rhea entered Chihiro's dream, and now she knows the romantic scenarios he's been dreaming of. She plans to make Chihiro's dream come true. Rhea approaches Chihiro and kisses him, holding him tightly. In the end, Chihiro's dream does become a reality, but Rhea's embrace gets stronger and starts to hurt him. Ranko, looking puzzled, just watches from the side. She screams loudly, and the sound echoes outside. Chihiro's father asks Mero if she also heard the scream. Mero responds that it probably was Ranko, but reassures him that Chihiro is with her now, so there's nothing to worry about. After finally finishing her kiss, Rhea lets Chihiro go. Ranko looks angry at Chihiro and demands to know what's going on. Why is Ra in his room, and more importantly, why didn't Chihiro take her to the hospital when she's clearly injured? Ranko suspects that Rhea must be a zombie. Chihiro says he'll explain everything, but Ranko cuts him off, accusing him of being a murderer. She throws a clock at him, hitting him on the head. Ranko continues to hit Chihiro with a stuffed animal, calling him weird and accusing him of killing people for his zombie experiments. Chihiro insists that Ranko is misunderstanding the situation, but she doesn't believe him. She even threatens to call the police. Meanwhile, Rhea silently watches the argument, noticing Babu watching her from the roof. Chihiro begs Ranko to stop hitting him and promises he'll explain everything. However, Ranko keeps attacking, even choking him, demanding to know what he's done. Chihiro finally says that Rhea secretly drank his potion. He also points out that the more pressing issue now is Rhea acting strangely. Both of them pause when they see Rhea climbing out of the bedroom window, heading toward the roof to follow Babu. Chihiro calls out to her, but she's already gone. He tells Ranko to go get his grandfather from the bathroom. Ranko asks why, but Chihiro just tells her to do it. Meanwhile, Chihiro climbs onto the roof to follow Rhea. Just as he's about to move, his father calls out to him, reminding him to finish his cleaning duties soon. Rhea is no longer in sight, and Chihiro panics, quickly looking down below. To his surprise, he sees Rhea and Babu eating hydrangea leaves. He's confused as to why Rhea would eat the leaves, but after watching closely, he notices that Rhea's eyes have returned to their normal color. Rhea seems to snap back to reality, confused about what she's doing. She looks normal again, and when Chihiro calls out to her, the blanket wrapped around her falls off, exposing her chest. She screams in embarrassment, confused about why she's outside like that. Chihiro jumps down from the roof, grabs his shirt from the clothes line, and throws it to Rhea so she can cover up. After eating the hydrangea leaves, Rhea returns to normal. Chihiro starts to realize that the hydrangea poison is key to perfecting his potion. This means that by consuming hydrangea leaves, the effects of the potion are prolonged. Chihiro shouts to Rhea, telling her that both she and Babu need the hydrangea leaf poison to maintain their condition. Jaguru arrived, feeling proud of Chihiro, while Ranko managed to carry Jaguru on her back. Jaguru had already suspected that it was Chihiro who gave Sada the resurrection potion and brought him back to life. Chihiro corrected him, saying it was Ra, not Sada. Jaguru explained that the resurrection potion wasn't perfect, and if Chihiro only gave one dose without further treatment, the person's senses and motor skills would deteriorate gradually until they returned to being a corpse. Ranko, trying to shake Jaguru off her, protested, but Jaguru mistook her for Otoji, his wife. Ranko clarified she wasn't Otoji, leaving Chihiro confused about what they were doing. As Ranko continued trying to get Jaguru off her, he resumed his explanation. To keep someone resurrected in good health, they need to exercise regularly, maintain a low body temperature, and consume hydrangea leaves routinely. Eventually, Jaguru's small body slipped off and fell to the ground. Chihiro, surprised that Jaguru knew all of this, asked why he hadn't written it down in a book. Jaguru called him foolish, saying Chihiro should have figured it out by observing the resurrected person every day. Meanwhile, Chihiro's father and Mero, watching the commotion, asked what exactly was going on. Mero admitted she had no idea. Chihiro then asked if that meant as long as a resurrected person ate hydrangea leaves, their body wouldn't decay. Jaguru replied no, because the potion wasn't perfect. While it could slow down the decaying process, it couldn't stop it entirely. Just as Jaguru was about to explain further, Ranko hit him with a pot, causing him to revert back to his senile state. It was rare for Jaguru to be so lucid, and Ranko apologized, saying she hadn't meant to hit him. Mero gently guided her grandfather back inside. Though Chihiro was disappointed that Jaguru had reverted to his usual state, he was glad to have learned valuable information. He realized that he needed to monitor Rei's body every day and figure out how to maintain both her and Babu's condition. Chihiro's father approached Chihiro and asked who the girl was. Chihiro, flustered, said he would explain later, or he should have told him earlier. Rav, noticing their conversation, became anxious. She worried that now Chihiro's family knew about her, she might not be able to stay in the house anymore. Chihiro's father pressed Chihiro for an answer. Chihiro then pleaded with his father to allow Rhea to stay with them. Rhea and Ranko were both shocked by this request, and Chihiro repeated it, emphasizing that Rhea had nowhere else to go and that he felt responsible for her. Chihiro kept pleading, and Chihiro's father, While processing the situation, remarked that it was unusual for Chihiro to be so serious about anything other than zombies. Shigeru whispered to Ranko that this was, in fact, also about zombies. Shigeru's father, still unsure of the full situation, recalled that the Shiryu Temple had been used as a refuge in the past, so it should be fine for Rei to stay. Shigeru was stunned by his father's response. Shigeru's father explained that he had no reason to turn Rei away. Overjoyed, Chihiro thanked his father, but Ranko looked downcast after hearing this. Shigeru called Rei over, saying his father had given her permission to stay, so she no longer had to hide. Hearing Chihiro's words, Chihiro's father concluded that Rei must have already been living with Chihiro, which Chihiro quickly denied, saying that wasn't what he meant. Ranko approached and teased, so that's how it is, but Chihiro denied it again. Rei and Ranko exchanged glances, making Rei feel even more uneasy, knowing the situation was becoming more complicated. Ranko accused Chihiro of being a playboy and nearly strangled him, but stopped when she realized Chihiro's father was watching. She excused herself, saying she had to deliver an order. Before leaving, Ranko borrowed some of Chihiro's clothes from the laundry line, and her own clothes had been torn by Rei earlier in the room. Chihiro's father just smiled at Chihiro, amused by the situation. Night had fallen and Chihiro decided to start writing notes since Rei had been living with him. He began jotting down his observations, just like his grandfather had suggested. Every day he would write down what he observed, hoping that this would help him find clues to maintain her body. Rei approached him, apologizing for being such a burden to Chihiro. He told her not to worry, saying that he was also learning a lot about zombies. Rei asked if it was okay for her to use Chihiro's room all by herself. Chihiro reassured her not to worry about it, as he was still in his own home. Rei said she didn't mind sharing the room with him. Chihiro responded by saying that things were already bad enough after they kissed, and if they got too close, he worried he might not be able to control himself. Rei was surprised to hear they had kissed, asking what he meant by that. It seemed she didn't remember the incident at all. Rei kept pressing him for answers, and Chihiro eventually lied, saying it was just his imagination. Rei speculated that maybe Chihiro had kissed her when she wasn't conscious. Shigeru denied it, saying that Rei was the one who kissed him first. Mero, hearing the commotion, assumed her brother was just enjoying his youth. Chihiro decided to start recording Rei's every move so he could notice even the slightest change. He examined Rei's body, her thighs, legs, upper arms, and the back of her neck. All seemed normal. Rei was shocked by what Chihiro was doing. Chihiro explained that this was part of his zombie research. Rei asked him to stop because it was embarrassing, but Chihiro said it was for her sake, so she didn't need to do anything. Chihiro's family was having dinner in the dining room, and as usual, his grandfather asked a question. This time, he wondered why there was paprika in his miso soup, but Mero explained it was eggplant. Chihiro's father asked Chihiro why he didn't invite Rei to dinner. Chihiro explained that Rei was too shy to eat with them, so she would eat alone later. Mero was disappointed because she had made extra food for Rei. Chihiro said it was fine and that next time Mero didn't need to go through the trouble since Rei didn't want to be a burden on the family. Chihiro's father told Chihiro that Rei shouldn't think like that, and Mero asked Chihiro to let Rei know she would be happy if Rei ate her food. Chihiro said he would tell her. Chihiro started thinking about all the problems he had to deal with, and maybe Rei should pretend to eat even if she had lost her sense of taste. Ranko then came to Chihiro's house, bringing clothes for Rei to wear every day. Chihiro instead asked Ranko to lend her underwear as well, but Ranko refused, saying she would buy new ones and bring them tomorrow. Before leaving, Ranko told Chihiro that she already knew Rei wasn't his girlfriend. Chihiro thanked Ranko, which made her smile. Chihiro felt relieved that Rei at least had a change of clothes, but he was still thinking about the issue of food. In his opinion, Rei no longer had a functioning metabolism, so maybe she didn't need food at all. Rei still looked the same as she had before she died. When he returned to his room, Chihiro saw Rei feeding hydrangea leaves to Babu. Watching Rei and Babu made Chihiro feel a bit sad. Rei and Babu were no longer like him, they were different creatures now. Rei called out to Chihiro, and as he entered, he told her he had brought her a change of clothes. Rei thanked him. Chihiro invited Rei to go for a walk outside. Rei asked Chihiro if he was sure about letting her be outside. Chihiro explained that his grandpa had said Rei needed to move around more. It seemed a bit strange on the surface. Chihiro and Rei looked like a normal couple, but Rei was actually a zombie. At first, Chihiro kind of enjoyed the situation, but after a while, that excitement started to fade. Time passed at the same pace for both humans and zombies. While they were walking, one of Danichiru's men spotted them from a car and kept watching. Rhea mentioned to Chihiro that she hadn't felt the need to use the bathroom or felt sleepy at all. She wondered if that meant she was truly dead. Rhea wasn't sure if there was an afterlife waiting for people who die normally. If she became a ghost, she thought she might not have the chance to walk around and talk with Chihiro. Rhea said she felt more suited to being a zombie and even thanked Chihiro for giving her this sense of freedom, despite being a zombie. Chihiro felt a wave of sadness wash over him, knowing that if Rhea stayed this way, one day she would decay and turn to ashes. He promised to take responsibility for her. Rhea asked him to take care of her body, though she realized she probably shouldn't have phrased it that way since it sounded a bit strange. They stopped talking and headed back home. Chihiro kept thinking about whether there was a real way to stop Rhea's body from decaying, wondering if there was a way to preserve her and fulfill all her wishes. He also worried about what would happen when hydrangea plants were no longer in season. He knew he needed to find another solution. While they were walking, a speeding car suddenly came out of nowhere and almost hit Chihiro. Luckily, Rhea managed to push him out of the way just in time. Rhea was shocked when she saw Chihiro rolling across the sidewalk and apologized, panicking about what she should do, but Chihiro assured her it was fine. Rhea's strength was incredible because the limiter in her brain was no longer working. When she pushed Chihiro, she did it so forcefully that he fell, injuring his arm and making it bleed. Seeing this, Rhea immediately licked the wound to sterilize it. Ranko was walking to Chihiro's house, bringing a change of clothes for Rhea, but along the way, she grumbled about why she had to help her. Ranko saw some kids playing tag, which made her start running and remember her childhood memories with Chihiro. She first met Chihiro when Ranko was a toddler after running too far and getting lost in a cemetery. She was terrified and began to cry. Ranko is a second-year high school student at Senka High. Her mother, Saoji Kaoru, owns a restaurant called Saoji Specialties, where her father works as the head chef. Being the daughter of restaurant owners, she's been helping out at the restaurant since she was little. Whenever her family needs her, Ranko is always ready to lend a hand. She's also very friendly with the customers. Today, Chihiro was helping out at Ranko's family restaurant, assisting in the kitchen. Ranko cheered him on, which startled Chihiro. He asked her not to talk to him so suddenly, especially while he was holding a knife as he could accidentally cut himself. Chihiro grumbled about why he had to help Ranko's restaurant on a Sunday. Ranko lightly patted him, reminding him that there was no need to be so cold, especially since they had been friends for a long time. Kaoru, overhearing the commotion, smiled and remarked that Chihiro and Ranko were like a newlywed couple. She added that if Chihiro were to marry Ranko, he wouldn't need to worry about taking over the restaurant. Kaoru also encouraged Chihiro not to waste the chance to get closer to Ranko. Ranko blushed at her mother's teasing, and in the midst of her embarrassment, she suddenly slipped. Fortunately, Chihiro quickly grabbed her hand to stop her from falling. He reminded her to be more careful. Ranko apologized, still holding onto Chihiro's hand, which led to more teasing from her mom. Flustered, Chihiro let go of her hand, and Ranko jokingly said that he didn't have to let go so quickly. Ranko first met Chihiro when she was in grade school. At the time, she got lost in a cemetery after running too far. In Ranko's mind, when characters in dramas first meet their future partners, they usually hate each other but slowly fall in love. However, her meeting with Chihiro was perfect. Little Ranko was crying loudly out of fear when Chihiro suddenly appeared to help her. He held her hand and guided her out of the cemetery. Ranko asked Chihiro if he wasn't scared, to which he confidently replied that he wasn't scared at all. Ranko thought her prince had come into her life. The next day, Ranko's uncle Doon introduced Chihiro to her. Doon explained that Chihiro was younger than Ranko, but hoped they could become good friends. Ranko quickly invited him to play. She would do anything to become friends with him. Chihiro invited Ranko to watch an exciting movie with him, but it turned out to be a scary zombie movie. Ranko screamed in fear at the terrifying scenes, so much so that she ran and hid under the table out of fright. She suggested they play outside instead, but Chihiro declined, saying he didn't like it outside. Frustrated, Ranko turned off the TV and forced Chihiro to go outside with her. Chihiro had no choice but to follow Ranko's lead and join her for a walk. While they were walking, Ranko asked Chihiro what he usually did for fun. He replied that he just watched zombie movies and read zombie books. Curious, Ranko asked what else he did besides zombie-related things, but Chihiro simply said, "Eat." It didn't sound very exciting. Chihiro just smiled in response. Eventually, they arrive at a beautiful hydrangea garden. Ranko loved hydrangeas and invited Chihiro to play house with her, but Chihiro was busy digging in the ground. He said there might be a corpse buried under the cherry tree and maybe he could find a zombie. Ranko begged him to stop because it was too scary. Suddenly, two kids approached and started talking about Chihiro. They teased him for playing with a girl, asking if he didn't want to play with them because he preferred hanging out with a girl instead. They continued to mock Chihiro. Ranko scolded the two boys, but Chihiro burst into tears and ran away. The two naughty kids laughed, saying they always made Chihiro cry because he was such a crybaby. Out of Ranko's expectations, it turned out that Chihiro, whom she once thought of as her prince, was just a zombie maniac, lazy, and had no friends. He was also a crybaby who couldn't do anything right. He wasn't afraid of cemeteries because he liked zombies and he lived in a temple. That's why Ranko didn't like him anymore by the time she had to go home. Ranko's mother, Kaoru, said her goodbyes and thanked Doowon, mentioning that she always enjoyed visiting. Doowon also invited them to visit again when there wasn't a festival. Kaoru asked about Chihiro's mother, Yuzume. Doowon explained that his wife had taken Mero to the hospital because she had a fever. Doowon then said goodbye to Ranko's father, who was also his older brother. Kaoru offered Ranko the chance to say goodbye to Chihiro, but she refused. Besides helping with the cooking at the restaurant, Chihiro was also forced by Ranko to help deliver orders to customers' homes. According to Ranko, Chihiro wasn't much help in the kitchen. After all, Chihiro had never used a kitchen knife before. Ranko followed Chihiro to deliver orders because she wasn't sure he could greet the customers politely, and if he didn't, it could ruin the restaurant's reputation. Chihiro said he wasn't antisocial and that he could be polite. They arrived at the temple to deliver an order to Doowon. Doowon told Chihiro to stop complaining and do his job properly. Doowon was very grateful to Ranko, even asking her to use Chihiro as much as she wanted. Chihiro didn't even have the right to refuse. There were still 2 food deliveries left. Ranko asked if Chihiro didn't want to help her family, but Chihiro didn't mean it that way. He was just worried about Rhea. Ranko started teasing him, but Chihiro said that there was nothing special between him and Rhea. There were so many things he didn't know, and Rhea's condition wasn't stable. Ranko teased him again, saying that Chihiro worried about Rhea because she was cute. Chihiro got annoyed and told Ranko that she didn't understand at all. Just then, Yasutaka and Mogi suddenly appeared in front of them. Yasutaka guessed that Chihiro and Ranko were on a date. Chihiro quickly said they weren't, but Ranko told him he didn't mean to say it like that. Chihiro firmly told Ranko that this wasn't a date. Ranko got irritated and asked if that meant Chihiro didn't want to date her. They started arguing and Yasutaka concluded that this might be a lover's quarrel. Chihiro insisted they weren't a couple. Yasutaka couldn't believe it. Rhea and Ranko, 2 of the most popular girls at Sanka High, were both connected to Chihiro. Yasutaka then questioned Chihiro, asking if he was only interested in zombies. Yasutaka felt like Chihiro was mocking him, while Chihiro was just having fun and relaxing but was surrounded by popular girls. Moji tried to calm Yasutaka down, who was throwing a tantrum. Chihiro was getting fed up with Yasutaka's behavior. Yasutaka then asked Ranko what she liked about Chihiro, considering he was a zombie maniac, antisocial, lazy, useless, and stubborn. Ranko agreed with Yasutaka's assessment, which surprised Chihiro, who didn't expect Ranko to agree. Not wanting to be outdone, Chihiro pointed out that Yasutaka was a pervert who liked pretty girls. Yasutaka proudly admitted to Chihiro's description of him. Little Ranko met Chihiro again exactly 2 years after their first meeting, when Ranko was 6 years old. Ranko's father moved to Chiba and opened a restaurant there. The house where Ranko and her family moved was near Chihiro's temple. Kaoru invited Chihiro to visit their home to play with Ranko. Even though Ranko's love for him had faded, she still thought of Chihiro as her cousin, so she felt she had to play with him. Chihiro, who was engrossed in reading a zombie book, was invited by Ranko to play video games, but he refused. Ranko then suggested they go outside for a walk, but once again, Chihiro turned her down. He hadn't changed at all. Kaoru came over and brought them some snacks, telling Chihiro that since he and Ranko were now neighbors, he should play with her. Kaoru understood that Chihiro was a shy boy. Ranko couldn't understand why her mother liked Chihiro so much and always tried to make them close. She never even asked if Ranko wanted to be friends with him or not. At that time, Ranko was sitting alone in the dining room when her mother asked where Chihiro was. Ranko replied that Chihiro was upstairs reading a book. Kaoru asked why Ranko wasn't playing with him, and Ranko said that Chihiro didn't want to play video games, go outside, or do anything with her. Kaoru suggested that Ranko go to the nearby video rental store, reminding her that she had mentioned wanting to watch an anime. Obeying her mother, Ranko walked with Chihiro to a nearby rental store. Chihiro was so distant, he walked past Ranko without even holding her hand. As soon as they got inside, Chihiro headed straight to the zombie DVD section. Ranko tried offering him some fun anime movies, but Chihiro said zombie films were more exciting. Ranko was startled when a tall man wearing a scary zombie mask walked past her. It turned out that the man was the store clerk. Chihiro showed one of the DVDs he wanted to rent, and the clerk complimented his taste but offered him a new American zombie movie instead. Chihiro was immediately interested in watching it. The clerk was impressed that a 5-year-old like Chihiro could handle watching a horror movie in English. The clerk mentioned that the movie was a bit extreme and asked Chihiro to keep it a secret from his parents. On their way home, Ranko asked what the clerk meant by an extreme movie, and Chihiro guessed it would have a lot of scenes with zombies covered in blood. He was curious about what those bloody scenes would look like. Ranko asked why Chihiro didn't consult her before picking a zombie movie. Chihiro reassured Ranko that the movie would be exciting. However, Ranko didn't like horror movies. Chihiro insisted that after watching it, she'd come to enjoy them. Ranko then asked, "Isn't this movie in English?" Chihiro confidently replied that even if they didn't understand the language, it would still be fun. Ranko got frustrated, saying that the movie didn't sound fun to her and that she just wanted to watch anime. Ranko, still wanting to watch anime, grabbed the DVD and ran to return it and exchange it for something else. She ran as fast as she could, with Chihiro chasing after her. Unfortunately, they were suddenly stopped by a fierce-looking dog ahead of them. Ranko froze in fear. The dog approached Ranko, and Chihiro, trying to avoid it, stepped aside. The dog barked at Ranko, making her cry. Though terrified himself, Chihiro gathered his courage, picked up a metal pipe, and used it to scare the dog away. The dog quickly backed off and left. Ranko was moved by Chihiro's brave act, and after the dog left, the two of them cried together. Afterward, they held hands and walked home together. Ranko was deeply thankful to Chihiro for saving her. Ranko first realized she had fallen in love with Chihiro at a funeral, and by the time she was 10, she was certain of her feelings. As they grew older, Ranko asked Chihiro what his idea of a first kiss was like. Chihiro, still clueless, didn't really understand what Ranko meant. Ranko explained that there are many romantic ways to have a first kiss, like on the beach at sunset or like lovers who are about to be separated. However, Chihiro, true to his nature, said he wanted to kiss a female zombie like in the movies he was watching. Ranko got annoyed and asked Chihiro if he really thought something like that could happen. She urged him to take it more seriously, saying that a kiss is something incredibly special. Yasutaka still couldn't accept the fact that Chihiro was involved with popular girls. He even cursed Chihiro, but at the same time he also begged Chihiro to introduce him to a girl. Chihiro couldn't understand Yasutaka's stubborn behavior. He then suggested that they should finish delivering the last 2 orders. Ranko, in her usual playful way, asked Chihiro if they could hold hands. Chihiro questioned why, but Ranko insisted, so Chihiro reluctantly agreed to hold her hand. Ranko then asked if Chihiro remembered the first time they held hands. Chihiro responded by recalling the funeral, when he saw Ranko crying, and he had held her hand to comfort her. Chihiro asked when exactly it happened, but Ranko, brushing it off, said she had forgotten since it was so long ago and let go of his hand. This left Chihiro even more confused by Ranko's behavior. After they finished their deliveries, Ranko told Chihiro he was done for the day and could go home as the restaurant's busy hours were over and she would take care of the rest. Chihiro thanked her and was about to leave when Ranko suddenly stopped him. She moved in close to him as if she was about to kiss him. However, Chihiro didn't react and simply closed his eyes. Ranko, frustrated, told Chihiro not to act like the world was ending just because someone wanted to kiss him. She repeated that a kiss was something precious and that he needed to take it seriously. Upset, Ranko ran all the way to the edge of a bridge, thinking about how Rhea had kissed Chihiro. She had a feeling she didn't want to be outdone by Rhea, and in a burst of emotion, she shouted to motivate herself. Since Rhea became a zombie, Chihiro decided to document everything about her and observe her closely. He constantly keeps an eye on her. Rhea asks Chihiro to stop recording while she's eating, but he insists that the observations would be meaningless if he didn't record everything. Chihiro's family, but Chihiro's father scolds Chihiro to put the camera down and join in eating. Obeying him, Chihiro sets his camera on a tripod. As they all eat, Reia's meal consists solely of hydrangea leaves. Chihiro's father then asks if she's a vegetarian. Suddenly, Jaguru shouts, asking who put a snail in his miso soup, his usual quirky question during family meals. As usual, Mero answers that it's a clam, not a snail. Even Babu, the family's cat, joins them, eating hydrangea leaves like Ra. Afterward, Babu jumps onto Mero's head, making Rei smile at the cat's cute antics. That night, Chihiro jots down notes about his observations on Rhea, learning a few things in the process. First, zombies don't need sleep. Rhea stays awake even when Chihiro is fast asleep, looking somewhat bored as she waits for him to wake up. Second, zombies can bathe but don't sweat. Finally, zombies don't need to use the restroom, though they do need hydrangea leaves to maintain the effects of the revival potion. Babu hops onto Chihiro's bed and suddenly coughs up the hydrangea leaves he ate, almost like a furball. Chihiro watches Rhea closely, wondering if she'll do the same, and he's eager to record it if she does. He points the camera at Rhea, asking if she feels like throwing up. Rhea asks him what exactly he's expecting to happen. Chihiro just smiles, keeping the camera trained on her, and Rhea, a bit annoyed, tells him he can keep recording her for his observations, but that she wants something in return. She wants to do something normal, something that a regular girl would do. The next day, Rhea invites Chihiro to go clothes shopping with her, showing him different outfits and asking for his opinion. However, Chihiro only gives vague answers like, "It's nice," without really paying attention. Frustrated, Rhea asks him to actually focus on the clothes because she wants to pick the best-looking one in the store. Although they've been there a while, she still hasn't chosen anything. She's determined to find the perfect outfit since Chihiro's buying, but she's also feeling uncertain about what to pick. Chihiro has been recording her for over an hour now, and Rhea decides she also wants to buy a hat. Chihiro agrees as long as the total stays under 10,000 yen. They're lucky it's cloudy today, as they typically avoid going out during the day. Sunlight might accelerate Rhea's body decomposition. Chihiro realizes how much Rhea wanted this shopping trip, and he decides there's no need to record every moment of it because he's not making this film as a farewell or anything like that. Observing Rhea chatting with the store clerk, who compliments her and says the outfit suits her complexion, Chihiro starts to understand that Rhea hasn't had the freedom to enjoy things like this before. Ranko went to the hot springs in the afternoon to clear her mind. She still remembered what happened yesterday and Chihiro's words about how he felt responsible for Rhea. It was the first time Ranko had seen Chihiro that serious. She understood that Rhea was struggling after becoming a zombie, but she felt Chihiro should have told her if he was living with Rhea. Ranko stepped on the scale and saw that she had gained some weight, feeling frustrated that all Chihiro seemed to think about was Ra. She wished she would at least talk about her once in a while. Just then, Mero entered the sauna's changing room, surprising Ranko. Ranko greeted her, and Mero replied that she had come with two of her friends. Mero asked if Ranko was also here to take a sauna bath during the day. Ranko said that after helping out at the restaurant, she decided to treat herself to a daytime sauna. Ranko then asked if Mero and her friends had planned to come or if they were just stopping by on their way home. Mero explained that she and her friends wanted to relax in the sauna before having tea. Curious, Ranko asked if Chihiro was at home. Mero told her that her brother had gone to the neighboring town that morning to shop, bringing Rhea along to buy her some new clothes. Feeling a bit down after hearing that Chihiro and Rhea were off having fun together, Ranko quickly cheered herself up, determined not to be left out of the fun. She enthusiastically invited Mero and her friends to join her in the sauna, insisting they wouldn't leave until they'd watched the sunset together. Meanwhile, Rhea was still with Chihiro in the neighboring town, wearing the new outfit and hat he had just bought her. Chihiro quietly commented that the clothes really suited her. Rhea asked if he had said something, but he denied it. Not believing him, she tried to coax Chihiro into admitting what he said, but he wouldn't budge. Noticing Chihiro was holding a shopping bag, Rhea asked if he had bought anything for himself, but he told her he hadn't bought a thing. Rhea then asked Chihiro where they would go next, but he asked her if their day out wasn't over yet. Rhea eagerly expressed her desire to visit more places in this town. Unbeknownst to them, Danichiru's men had been following them. One of them quickly called Danichiru, informing him that he spotted Rhea and Chihiro at the Shanai City shopping center. Danichiru instructed him to keep following them at a distance and to wait for the right moment to capture Rhea when she was alone. Rhea invites Chihiro to enter a haunted house. She isn't fazed by the zombie props inside at all. In fact, she comments on how the zombie dolls don't look very realistic. She finds the stitching on the wounds a bit rough, suggesting that if they had been sewn more carefully, it'd look a lot more authentic. On the other hand, Chihiro is terrified if they step inside. Seeing him so scared makes Rei burst out laughing, completely surprised that Chihiro, of all people, would be afraid of a haunted house. Shigeru admits that even though he loves horror movies and zombies, a haunted house is a completely different experience for him. Rei can't stop laughing, which makes Chihiro feel like she's teasing him. But Rei is just glad that he came with her, despite his fear, to keep her company. She thanks him, and Chihiro asks her to make this their last haunted house visit. Rei agrees with a smile. Shigeru hands over a special coat he picked out just for Rei, a long coat she can wear in hot weather, with pockets for ice packs to help keep her cool. He thinks it will help her stay safe whenever she goes outside, and he suggests she could even wear it to school, which might let her live more like a regular girl. Rei covers her face as if she's crying, which catches Chihiro off guard. He worries that maybe she doesn't like the coat, but it turns out Rei is genuinely touched by how much thought he put into her needs. She's so happy and moved by Chihiro's kindness, even though as a zombie, she realizes that she can't actually shed tears, no matter how much she wants to. Shigeru learns this for the first time, which surprises him. Rei thought he knew everything about zombies, but it turns out there are still things Chihiro has yet to understand. She promises to teach him more about zombies. Meanwhile, Danakuru is practicing fencing, but his thoughts are still with Rei. He believes that Rei might feel free now, but he sees it as a false sense of freedom. His upbringing may have made her sad, but he thinks she's wrong to assume that freedom means running away. Danakuru hopes that one day Rei will return to him and he'll show her what real freedom is. Rei's stomach growls again, reminding her it's time to consume another dose of the hydrangea potion. Shigeru heads off to get food for himself, telling Rei she can start eating. 3 of Danachuru's henchmen have been tailing Rei. One is seated at a table nearby, keeping an eye on her, while the other 2 are on a nearby kid's ride, waiting for the right moment to strike. Rei opens her food container, feeling a pang of loneliness as she realizes she no longer eats the same meals as Chihiro. But what can she do? As a zombie, her stomach is no longer functional. One of the henchmen at the nearby table subtly signals the other 2 by placing his glass on the table. Receiving the signal, the 2 on the kid's ride get up, approaching Rei from behind, while the other closes in from the front. They're just about to make their move when suddenly, Yasutaka appears and greets Rei. He hadn't expected to run into her here. Danichuru's men help their plan in surprise, wondering who this person is. None of them recognize him, so they decide to pull back and reassess the situation, waiting for another opportunity. Rei didn't recognize Yasutaka at first, but he quickly reminded her that they'd shared some great moments together. He introduced himself and mentioned he was Chihiro's friend. Then Rei remembered Yasutaka as the guide who had spoken with her in the schoolyard. Yasutaka invited Rei to go out with him and asked if she wanted to go shopping, but Rei declined, explaining that she had already done her shopping. Yasutaka then asked if she was resting here, suggesting they find a better place to relax. Suddenly, he grabbed Rei's arm and pulled her, making her chair fall over. Shocked by how cold her hand was, he insisted they find a warm spot to enjoy the nice scenery. Meanwhile, Danichuru's men continued watching Rei, waiting for the right moment to kidnap her. They began tailing Rei and Yasutaka as they walked. Rei was surprised that Yasutaka wanted to go outside, even suggesting they sit in the sunlight. Rei quickly explained she couldn't stay outside for long, but Yasutaka kept pushing, saying it wasn't healthy to stay in air-conditioned places for too long. He continued trying to convince Rei to join him outside. Danichuru's men, seeing Rei and Yasutaka positioned near the exit, prepared to act. With their plan in place, one of them counted down to 3 and they sprang into action. One guy hit Yasutaka, while the other 2 grabbed Rei, covering her mouth and carrying her off. When Chihiro returned to their table, he was shocked to find Rei missing. Yasutaka had fallen to the ground after being struck, but Rei's new strength allowed her to break free from the kidnappers. She kicked one of them, stunning him with her surprising strength. Chihiro, hearing Rei's scream, rushed to the exit and found her, now fending off the kidnappers by hitting one with a large park bench. When he called out to her, Rei came over and thanked him for saving her, but Chihiro admitted he hadn't really done anything and warned her to be careful, noting that her arm might break if she lifted anything too heavy. Terrified, Rei clung to Chihiro, telling him that the men had tried to kidnap her, though she didn't know who they were. Looking around, Chihiro was startled to see Yasutaka lying on the ground. As the kidnappers regrouped, they briefly discussed changing their plan. Shigeru approached them and demanded to know who they were and why they had targeted Rhea, but they didn't respond. Growing frustrated, Shigeru threatened to call the police and ask if Rhea's father had sent them. Just then, one of the men grabbed Shigeru from behind, while another lifted his legs. They quickly carried him away, their teamwork ensuring they successfully captured Shigeru. Rhea tried to chase after them, but Yasutaka, still dazed, accidentally held her back by her leg. Unfortunately, she couldn't keep up as their car sped off. The kidnappers had tied Shigeru up inside the vehicle. One of them called Danakuru to apologize, explaining that their initial plan to capture Rhea hadn't worked due to her unexpected strength, so they had to go with Plan B and take Shigeru instead. He asked if they should dispose of Shigeru and attempt to capture Rhea again, but Danachuru instructed them to bring Shigeru directly to him. Hearing this, Shigeru saw it as a strange kind of blessing. He thought of it as his chance to finally settle everything, and he was eager to confront Danakuru face to face. Shigeru's family lives in a temple, and lately things have changed since Rhea started staying with them. Most of the household chores are still handled by Shigeru's younger sister, Mero. Rhea is sitting on the roof enjoying the view when Shigeru calls out to her from his window, reminding her not to stay outside too long, especially in the heat. Rhea apologizes and notices Mero cleaning the yard. She tries to greet Mero, but Mero doesn't respond, leaving Rhea confused about why she's being ignored. Shigeru was also surprised, as Mero doesn't usually act this way. He tells Rhea to come back inside, and she crawls back into the house. Later, Shigeru's father informs Mero that he'll be back late today because he has to visit 3 different homes. He also mentions he'll have dinner out and that Shigeru and Rhea are going out, so Mero doesn't need to prepare dinner for him. Shigeru's father feels a sense of pride when Shigeru says he'll take care of Rhea. Initially, Shigeru's father wasn't sure if Shigeru could handle such a responsibility, but he sees that Shigeru has been making an effort to live up to his word. Normally, Shigeru lacks discipline and heavily relies on Mero, but Shigeru's father now sees him as a dependable young man. Shigeru's father notices that Mero is sweeping the same spot repeatedly and gently points out that it's not very useful. He then bids Mero farewell and leaves. That evening, Mero observes her older brother working late into the night, mixing potions and recording his observations of Rhea in a notebook. She recalls her father's words from earlier in the day. This is the first time she's seen her brother this serious and genuinely putting effort into something for someone else. Mero attends Shiocha Middle School and has 2 close friends. One of them is Shinoda Ichie, who's obsessed with zombie mysteries and on a mission to uncover zombie secrets. She eagerly shares her belief that zombies are spreading worldwide and wants to investigate it. The other friend, Yasaka Miko, is more skeptical. She thinks that if zombies truly existed, it would have already been reported on the news and in other media. Ichie believes the truth is being hidden by the government as suggested by online conspiracy theories. Miko says she'd have to see a zombie for herself to believe it, and Ichie replies that there's probably one nearby. In response, Miko jokingly asks if it could be Mero. Ichie tells her that's too close to home and changes the subject to something she finds even more intriguing, their art teacher, Yamanouchi. Ichie shares a strange story about leaving something behind in the art room one afternoon. When she went back to retrieve it, she was shocked to find Yamanouchi still there, feeding some kind of creature inside a large bag. Holding a hunk of bloody meat, he not only fed the creature but even ate some of the blood-covered meat himself, which seemed extremely suspicious. Mero adds that Yamanouchi always brings his car to school along with a large bag that sometimes moves, as if something alive is inside. It might not be a zombie, but it's definitely creepy. Miko mentions that Yamanouchi has looked unusually pale lately, and she's curious as to why. Ichie immediately concludes that Yamanouchi is some kind of otherworldly creature, definitely a zombie. Curious about what might be inside Yamanouchi's bag, Miko wonders if it could be a baby zombie or something similar. They've all seen strange things, and Ichie declares it's their job to gather evidence and prove Yamanouchi is a zombie. Full of excitement, Ichie dubs their group the Zombie Scoop Hunter. This evening, they hid behind the art room table to wait for Yamanouchi. As the evening arrived, Yamanouchi entered the art room and spoke to her large bag, apologizing for keeping it waiting. From behind a statue, Mero and her 2 friends watch everything unfold. Yamanouchi told the creature inside the big bag that it could eat as much as it wanted tonight. As she started unzipping the bag, Miko got a little scared, but Ichie reminded her that they were finally going to see a real zombie with their own eyes. Yamanochi then pulled out a chunk of raw meat, ready to drop it into the bag, and a strange noise came from inside, causing Mero and her friends to scream and knock over the statue on the table where they were hiding. Yamanochi ended up driving the three students home. Meanwhile, the creature inside the big bag turned out to be a young crocodile. Miko asked if the crocodile was Yamanochi's pet, to which Yamanochi confirmed, saying that it was very cute. Ichi then asked why Yamanochi brought her pet crocodile to school. Yamanochi explained that she was really worried about her pet, especially after hearing news about crocodiles escaping. But truthfully, she just didn't want to be separated from it, even for a short while. That's why she always kept it in her big bag and hid it in the art room. Yamanochi also mentioned that nothing calms her more than feeding it after class ends. The crocodile really loved meat, and when it turned to look at the backseat, they were all startled. Ichi then asked why Yamanochi had looked so pale recently, wondering if something was wrong. Yamanochi, blushing with embarrassment, explained that she had once eaten some of the raw liver with her crocodile. It had looked delicious, so she tried it, and then ended up with a terrible stomach ache. She thought the liver would be like the liver in sashimi and safe to eat raw, but it wasn't. That explained why her stomach had been hurting so much lately. Miko asked Ichi if there was any news about zombies that day, but Ichi replied there wasn't. Miko then shared an interesting story of her own, mentioning that she had an incredibly good sense of smell. During a recent school trip, she picked up a strange odor, saying it smelled like someone was boiling a corpse. Ichi questioned if Miko had ever smelled a boiling corpse before. Of course, she hadn't. She was only imagining it. She followed the scent, which grew stronger as she walked, and it led her right into a wall. She then peeked into a house and saw a pile of bones in the trash. Ichi became more intrigued by Miko's story. Miko continued her investigation, but eventually, the homeowner caught her snooping around. She asked the homeowner about her suspicions, and he burst out laughing. The shop owner explained that the smell was from a soup he was cooking mixed with the scent from the trash, which made Miko think it was a zombie. His husband told him to be more careful with the smell. Apparently, the husband had recently quit his job and wanted to open a ramen shop, so they've been working day and night on a special recipe. They ended up serving Miko a bowl of ramen and insisted she try it. Initially hesitant, Miko took a bite, and as soon as she tasted it, she couldn't stop eating. Mero concluded that what Miko had eaten was tonkatsu ramen. It made sense since it was Miko's first time eating it, and she finished every last bite. Ichi, however, was disappointed by Miko's story. She hoped for a spooky zombie story, not a tale about delicious ramen. Miko even remarked that the ramen tasted better than any zombie could. That evening, they went to the park, where Ichi remarked that finding a zombie was actually pretty difficult. She was confident, though, that one day she would find one. Mero casually mentioned that a few days ago, a zombie had been staying at her house. Ichi was instantly intrigued and begged Mero to show it to her. Mero didn't mind, but explained that the zombie was currently out on a walk. Ichi's curiosity only grew, and she excitedly asked Mero to show her a photo of the zombie as proof, with the idea of selling the story to Moo Monthly magazine. However, Mero disagreed, saying that it would be an invasion of privacy. Ichi laughed, saying that zombies don't have privacy. Mero clarified that she meant her family's privacy. The Furuya family had a reputation to uphold after all. Ichi wondered if it was safe for a zombie to go on a walk, but Mero simply replied that exercise is also important for zombies. Surprised, Ichi asked if zombies don't usually attack and eat people. Mero assured her that the zombie at her house only eats hydrangea leaves and is basically a vegetarian. Ichi found this zombie quite different from the usual kind, to which Mero added that the zombie at her house actually wants to be a normal girl, not a typical zombie. Skeptical, Ichi asked if Mero was sure that it was a real zombie. Mero explained that it was her older brother who told her so. Ichi didn't entirely believe it, thinking Mero's brother was just pulling her leg, given that he's obsessed with zombies and probably just dreams of kissing a zombie girl. Mero wasn't totally convinced herself, but suggested they head home as she needed to go grocery shopping. They left the park, though Ichi was still frustrated, thinking it had been her big chance to make her and her friends famous. Without thinking, Ichi blurted out that Mero's mom should have raised her brother better. Miko quickly reminded her that Mero's mom had already passed away. Realizing her mistake, Ichi apologized, but Mero reassured her friends not to worry. After all, her mother had been gone for so long that she didn't even have any memories of her. Mero suddenly noticed a snail crawling on a hydrangea leaf and stopped to observe it. Out of nowhere, she was reminded of her mother, specifically of the times her mother had tried to check her temperature, with a cool hand wrapped in bandages. Afterward, Meru went grocery shopping at the store. Upon arriving home, she heard Ranko and her older brother, Chihiro, talking near the front gate. Shigeru was telling Ranko to leave even though she had only come by to borrow a DVD and watch it together. But Chihiro refused. Ranko was upset, feeling that Chihiro had been pretty cold toward her lately. Shigeru, in turn, found Ranko's behavior odd and didn't know how to deal with her. In frustration, Ranko teased Chihiro, saying his brain was starting to rot just like a zombie's. Meru went to visit her mother's grave. As usual, her older brother had placed a strange-looking cake on the grave. Meru added some fruit and other snacks to make it look nicer, then offered a prayer for her mother. While she was there, Rhea showed up and greeted her. Meru asked if Rhea had any business at the cemetery. Rhea explained that she didn't really have any reason to be there, but she'd come since Chihiro had a guest at home. She also shared that sometimes she feels bad, wondering if she's burdening Chihiro and everyone around him. Meru quickly reassured her, saying that she wasn't bothered at all. Rhea apologized for bringing up something so odd, then noticed the offerings Meru had placed on her mother's grave. She admitted she hadn't realized before that Meru's mother had passed, and now it made sense why she'd never seen Chihiro's mom around. Rhea admired Meru, knowing she handled all the household chores herself. Meru mentioned that it had been her responsibility since she was young. Rhea, who had been pampered by her own family, expressed her admiration for Meru, who seemed to manage everything so well on her own. Meru commented that it would be easier if the men at home were more reliable. In response, Rhea offered to help Meru with the housework. At first, Meru turned down the offer, thinking it might be impolite, but Rhea insisted, saying it was something she genuinely wanted to do. Meru eventually agreed. Rhea noticed Meru blushing and asked if she had a fever, gently placing her hand on Meru's forehead. Then she remembered that as a zombie, she couldn't accurately gauge someone's temperature. The way Rhea acted reminded Meru so much of her mother that she accidentally called her mom. Rhea smiled and asked why Meru had called her that. Embarrassed by her slip-up, Meru turned red and quickly ran off. Rhea called after her, saying she'd forgotten her groceries, and in her rush, Meru tripped and fell. Rhea came over to help and treated Meru's injured leg. Meru apologized for the trouble, and after Rhea finished bandaging her up, she invited Meru to cook together. In that moment, Meru felt a closeness to Rhea, a sense of connection she couldn't quite explain. The next day, Meru showed a photo of Rhea to Ichi and Miko. Ichi seemed skeptical, joking that maybe Rhea was fooling her, while Miko simply complimented Rhea's beauty in the photo. Meru admitted that the shadow of her mother coming from Rhea. In the previous episode, Chihiro was kidnapped by Danichiru's men and quickly taken away in a car. Rhea tried to run after him, but the car sped off too fast. Danichiru wanted to settle everything with Chihiro. Chihiro was confined in a room in Danichiru's house with his hands and feet tied to a chair. A servant brought him a welcoming drink and thanked Chihiro for coming. Chihiro replied that he was already thirsty, but now wasn't really the time for a drink. Bound hand and foot, Chihiro couldn't drink anyway. The servant told him to enjoy his time and left, ignoring Chihiro's request to untie him. Chihiro, still not taking the situation seriously, asked the servant to stop joking around. He yelled that this was a kidnapping or detention, and wondered out loud what he'd do if his back started itching. Desperate, he shouted and struggled against his bonds, causing someone to open the door. Chihiro assumed the servant had returned, but instead it was Ri's mother, Aria, who entered. Aria, appearing intoxicated, told Chihiro to be quiet as she could hear him all the way down the hall. When he asked who she was, Aria replied that he had been the one to come here, considering his question rude. Yet Chihiro hadn't wanted to be there at all. Aria closed the door and approached him, introducing herself as Danichiru's wife. She quickly recognized Chihiro and thanked him for looking after Rhea. Chihiro clarified that he hadn't gone that far with Rhea. Aria then pried into how close he and Rhea were, even asking if he hadn't kissed her yet. She mentioned that Rhea was always watched, adding that Rhea was likely venting her feelings right now. Chihiro was offended by Aria's assumptions about Rhea. Laughing, Aria remarked that it was no wonder Chihiro hadn't gotten that close with Rhea, as Rhea was now a monster. She explained that a zombie's body would eventually decay, start to smell bad, and the skin would wrinkle. Chihiro was shocked to hear her mother speak about her child that way. However, Aria corrected him, saying Rhea wasn't her child and that she had never even given birth. This revelation stunned Chihiro. Aria revealed that she was Danichiru's second wife, and that Rhea was his first wife's child, meaning that Aria and Rhea had no blood relation. Shigeru, hearing this for the first time, realized Rhea had never told him, as it was a taboo subject known to only a few people. Aria said this rare opportunity gave her a chance to share everything with Shigeru. She explained that she had previously worked as a servant for the family, but that didn't mean she came from a low-class background. Before Rhea was born, all the servants working in the area were candidates to become Danichiru's wife. Only servants from good families and with strong achievements were allowed to work there. Aria then showed Chihiro a photo of herself from her time as a servant in the Senka family. From a young age, Danichiru was surrounded by servants trying to get close to him in hopes of becoming part of the Senka family. However, it seemed Danichiru wasn't interested in any of them. Aria worked as a maid in this house when Danichiru was still a college student. One of the other maids mocked Aria, saying it was a shame that all of Aria's hard work as a maid had been wasted, as Danichiru apparently wasn't interested in women. The maid even said that all of Aria's efforts were bound to come to an end right there. Confidently, Aria replied that it wasn't that Danichiru wasn't attracted to women, but rather that he simply wasn't interested in any of the maids in the house. That maid then raised her hand to slap Aria, but Aria quickly blocked her hand. Aria was full of confidence because she had never been rejected by a man before. A call rang out requesting a maid to Danichiru's study. Aria entered and immediately poured Danichiru a fresh cup of coffee. Surprised, Danichiru asked how Aria knew he wanted coffee. Aria responded that she had only guessed based on his empty cup, and she also brought him a napkin. Danichiru asked for her name, and after that introduction, Aria gradually earned Danichiru's trust bit by bit. She often accompanied him during fencing practice and even stayed with him while he read books before bed. But in the end, Danichiru still wasn't interested in her, and slowly Aria began to suspect that he truly didn't like women. Her assumption, however, was mistaken. One day, the Senka family invited people to participate in a fencing tournament at a charity event. Naturally, Danichiru joined the fencing tournament. Although he always won these fencing tournaments, he actually disliked them. After a match he had just won, he felt frustrated with his opponent, feeling that his rival hadn't truly challenged him. The Senka family donated a lot of money to international fencing organizations, making them the main sponsors of the event. This tournament was held annually, and Danichiru always won. Since he didn't fully understand the context, he found himself irritated by how easily he won. After the tournament ended and the audience had left the arena, a young disabled girl suddenly approached him and handed him the glove he had thrown away earlier. The young girl spoke to him, saying that even if Danichiru was dissatisfied with his match results, if he treated his opponents with disrespect, he might anger God. Despite the fact that the matches were arranged, what truly mattered was that all this hard work and dedication had brought him this far. Her words left a deep impression on Danichiru, and he found himself falling in love with her. A few days later, Danichiru proposed to the disabled girl, who was only 15 years old. This was unprecedented in the Senka family, as Danichiru rejected the maids vying for his attention and chose a disabled girl with an unclear family background. Naturally, his relatives strongly opposed this, but Danichiru didn't care and proceeded with the marriage. One day, some of his relatives confronted him about his marriage plans with the disabled girl. One of them, outraged, said that her family background was questionable. Danichiru then stated that if that was the issue, he would sever ties with the family, ensuring no further objections to his marriage. One relative, shocked, warned him against making foolish decisions and couldn't believe Danichiru would cut family ties for a girl like that. Hearing this, Danichiru refused to accept anyone disrespecting his future wife. He reminded them that since he was no longer part of the Senka family, they should mind their conduct and know that he despised anyone who insulted his wife, which made everyone who heard him fearful. After silencing those opposing him, Danichiru married the disabled girl. Unfortunately, shortly after giving birth to Re, she passed away. Danichiru felt deeply depressed at that time, struggling to accept the reality, almost as if he thought he'd be better off dead. His health deteriorated, and Aria continued caring for him until he gradually recovered. Eventually, Aria and Danichiru decided to marry. However, even though they had been husband and wife for several years, Danichiru never truly regarded Aria as his wife. Curious, Shigeru innocently asked what it meant to not be considered a wife, and Aria explained that she and Danichiru had never been intimate. Danichiru only wanted a mother figure for his beloved daughter. Yet he didn't even treat her as Rhea's mother. Danichiru was always preoccupied with playing with Rhea, while constantly ignoring Aria. She did nothing but observe Danikuru and Rhea from a distance, feeling as though she wasn't truly part of the family. One day, Arya approached Danikuru in his library and invited him to go somewhere with her for a vacation, since they had never gone on a honeymoon. However, Danikuru responded that it might be a good time for Rhea to learn more about the outside world. Arya felt disappointed. She had hoped it would be a getaway just for the two of them. Despite her feelings, Arya believed that Danikuru had chosen her as his second wife because he loved her. But on the vacation, Danikuru only focused on Rhea, once again ignoring Arya. Little Rhea asked them to take a family photo during the trip. Until that point, Arya had assumed that Danikuru's affection for Rhea was merely the love of a parent for his child. One day, one of Danikuru's aides showed Arya something, telling her to stop trying to gain Danikuru's love. Arya didn't understand what he meant until he led her to a gap behind a bookshelf, giving her a direct view into a room Danikuru used for photographing Rhea. Through this gap, Arya saw Danikuru photographing Rhea without any clothes on, and she began to cry, realizing then that Danikuru was still obsessed with his first wife. Chihiro started to sense some of the reasons why Rhea felt trapped in this house. Suddenly, Arya took off her pajamas and asked Chihiro if he didn't think her life was sad. She leaned in close, telling Chihiro to comfort her with his body. She pulled his head close to her chest, insisting that he could never feel warmth like this from a zombie. Arya attempted to kiss him, but Chihiro resisted, causing them both to stumble. Chihiro apologized, explaining that he was only interested in zombie girls. Arya began to cry, wondering why everyone loved Rhea and no one wanted her. As she sobbed, Babu the cat meowed and approached her. Arya stopped crying and asked Babu if he would comfort someone like her. She hugged Babu, saying he was a sweet cat, and Babu seemed to enjoy it. Suddenly, Chihiro mentioned that Babu was also a zombie, and Arya immediately threw Babu from her arms, making Babu snarl angrily. Arya screamed for his servant to take Babu and Chihiro away. Chihiro then remarked that if Arya wanted him to leave, he'd gladly go if he could. A servant soon arrived and told him that wouldn't be possible, informing Chihiro that Danikuru wanted to see him. Chihiro, frustrated, called the situation a kidnapping, stating he didn't care if Danikuru was the head of the Senka family. No one had the right to treat him this way. The servant adjusted Chihiro's chair, and Chihiro asked to have his bindings removed, but the servant said he couldn't do that. Arya remarked that she invited Chihiro, as even he was acknowledged by Danikuru, while she was never once considered his partner. Meanwhile, a crowd gathered in front of the shopping center, watching as Yasutaka lay unconscious. At this moment, Rhea was in a taxi, frantically searching for Chihiro. She asked the driver to turn on the air conditioning, which puzzled him since it wasn't particularly hot. Rhea was certain that the people who kidnapped Chihiro were her father's henchmen. She knew Chihiro must be in danger. Urgently, she asked the taxi driver to speed up. He reluctantly picked up the pace but hesitated, wondering if his passenger would even have enough money to pay him. The attendant escorted Chihiro into a dark room. Chihiro, feeling uneasy, asked if Danikuru was supposed to meet him here. The attendant told him to be patient and then left him alone. Suddenly, lights in the room began turning on one by one, illuminating countless photos of Rhea on the walls. The pictures documented her life from her childhood to adulthood. Once all the lights were on, Danikuru appeared in front of Chihiro and explained that he had taken every photo of Rhea. No matter when captured her image, Rhea always appeared beautiful to him. To Danikuru, Rhea embodied purity and fragility. Danikuru explained that he had always safeguarded Rhea's innocence, and he even thanked Chihiro, saying that being apart from Rhea had allowed him to love her even more. He was now more determined than ever to protect her. Although Danikuru repeatedly expressed his gratitude, he made it clear he could never forgive Chihiro. The servant led Chihiro as they followed Danikuru down a long corridor. Chihiro asked where exactly he was being taken, suspecting that Danikuru might be planning something bad. He wondered if Danikuru would fry him in hot oil or maybe even push him off a cliff. Chihiro then asked the servant if he could be taken to the restroom, hoping he might have a chance to escape. However, the servant just replied that Chihiro could relieve himself in his pants, and they would clean up after him. They finally stopped at a door marked as the discipline room. Danikuru told Chihiro that he hadn't brought him here to be tortured. Danikuru opened the door, revealing a room decorated with a photo of himself and Rhea in fencing attire on the ceiling. The room was actually a fencing arena. Danakiro told Chihiro to choose whichever fencing equipment he liked, or he could fight barehanded if he preferred. Chihiro was confused about what Danakiro meant by this. Danachiro explained that they would determine who had the right to protect Rhea by competing in fencing. The servant then untied Chihiro's hands. Meanwhile, Rhea arrived outside her home in the middle of a heavy rainstorm. She got out of the taxi and ran straight into her house without paying the fare. The taxi driver assumed Rhea would pay him later. Rhea opened the front gate and was greeted by two servants. She immediately asked them to call her father, but the servant explained that he couldn't be summoned since Danakiro was busy. Rhea asked if Chihiro was there as she was eager to see him. The servant, of course, couldn't allow that. He told Rhea to stay calm and wait. Suddenly, one of Danachiro's men threw a net over her, capturing her. A servant entered the room where Chihiro was previously held captive and reported to Aria that Rhea had been captured, asking if she wanted to see her. Aria responded saying she had no reason to meet with Rhea, which surprised the servant. Rhea, now tied up and held in a basement room, demanded to know what they were doing to her. The servant apologized, explaining that they were just following Danakiro's orders. Rhea ordered the servant to untie her immediately. However, instead of obeying, the servant mocked her, noting how much Rhea had changed after running away from home for a few days. The servants were secretly planning to teach her a lesson without Danakiro's knowledge, which terrified Rhea as she wondered what they intended to do to her. It turned out that they started dressing her up in different outfits, putting her in a maid's costume, amused by how cute she looked. Rhea was bewildered, wondering why they were doing this to her. The servants explained they had always dreamed of dressing her up this way and believed the outfit suited her well. Rhea called them cowards for humiliating her while she was tied up, telling them they should be ashamed. Instead, the servants were thrilled to see her so upset, finding her even cuter when she was angry. They began picking more outfits for her to try on, including a ninja costume and other cosplay outfits. Rhea was frustrated knowing she didn't have time for this, especially as she got a bad feeling about Chihiro's safety. Meanwhile, Chihiro had already put on the fencing gear. Danachiro told him that if he could manage to land even one hit, he would consider Chihiro the winner. But Chihiro felt it was unfair since he knew nothing about fencing. Danachiro said Chihiro could use any martial art he was skilled in. Chihiro replied that he wasn't great at anything like that, which only irritated Danachiro, who realized Chihiro was weak and had no self-defense skills whatsoever. Danachiro was baffled as to why Rhea would choose to be with someone who lacked both fighting skills and talent like Chihiro. Chihiro retorted that Danachiro didn't know anything about him, and he continued to provoke Danachiro, who became increasingly enraged. Meanwhile, the two servants dressed Rhea in a skimpy maid outfit complete with bunny ears on her head. They were thrilled by how adorable she looked. Rhea yelled at them to untie her, but the two servants told her they could no longer follow her orders. They went back to picking out more outfits for her to try, debating loudly over whether Rhea should wear a ninja costume or another cosplay outfit. Rhea was fed up and didn't want to wear either. She insisted she had to leave now, summoning the strength to break the chains binding her hands, shattering them into pieces. Chihiro continued taunting Danachiro, who demanded to know what Chihiro was really trying to say. Chihiro told him he was disgusting, which took Danachiro by surprise. Chihiro pointed out that Danachiro had insisted they settle things with a one-on-one fight, deciding for himself who had the right to be with Rhea without considering her feelings at all. Chihiro said that Danachiro was arrogant for kidnapping him and dragging him here, only to lecture him. On top of that, Danachiro had the twisted habit of taking nude photos of his daughter on her birthdays. Danachiro was shocked that Chihiro knew about that. Chihiro called it unnatural, saying it went beyond a father's love for his daughter. He added that anyone would want to run away from a family like that. Meanwhile, Rhea managed to escape from the two servants and was frantically searching for Chihiro. Chihiro told Danachiro to stop this nonsense before deciding who would protect Rhea and suggested that Danachiro consider what Rhea herself wanted. After all, there was no point in making this decision when Rhea wasn't even there. From the beginning, Danachiro had it all wrong. Even though he claimed to want to protect Rhea, he actually just couldn't let her go. Chihiro added that he heard from Aria about how much Rhea had suffered. Chihiro told Danachiro he was treating Rhea like a stand-in for his long-deceased wife. Rhea arrived at the fencing room, but it was too late. Danachiro had already stabbed Chihiro. Danachiro was furious at Chihiro for underestimating him and twisted the blade deeper into Chihiro's body. He even threatened that with the power of the Sanka family, he could easily erase Chihiro's existence. Rhea was horrified by the scene. The servants gasped at the sight of Danachiro stabbing Chihiro. Danachiro asked if Chihiro hadn't expected him to actually go through with it. Shigeru lifted his head and slammed it against Danachiro's forehead, making Danachiro cry out in pain, which shocked Rhea. Shigeru said that was his way of paying him back. Rhea rushed to Chihiro and, noticing his clothes, asked why he was there dressed like that. Chihiro, captivated by Rhea's appearance, couldn't help but think she looked like a sexy zombie nurse.